Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'm Steve Richardson, council member at large, Mayor Pro Tem. Our mayor, is she on the line yet or called in yet? Charlie?
Negative.
Okay, she's at a track meet tonight and her son is running at 3 events, so that's where she is. Wonderful to see everybody here tonight. I'm glad you're here and join us. We will start off with public comment. If you'd like to comment, please come up to the podium, state your name and address and where you live. I'm sorry, what?
Roll call.
That might help first too. Let's do roll call
All
first.
right. Councilmember Hewlin. Here. Parker.
Present.
Dalby.
Here.
Schroeder. Present. Beach.
Here.
Richardson.
Present.
Mayor Erickson.
Now we'll move on to public comment. There is a form at the back. Please, at the end, if sometime before you're done, if you speak tonight, please fill it out, give it to Jackie so she get all the right information. I know she writes quickly and sometimes doesn't quite get it correct. So if there's anybody who'd like to speak on any issue, please come forward.
Hi, my name is Sue Wilson, address 114 West Hillcrest Drive. And I'm not speaking on an issue, but just to thank everybody in the city of Indianola. The Helping Hands celebrated their 40 years of service to the city and to Warren County yesterday. It was a great turnout. But I just wanted, the city employees have helped us a lot through the years trying to get issues resolved and the residents of Indianola. So I just wanted to say thank you and hopefully we can serve for another 40 years. Thank you.
Thank
you.
you.
Anyone else in the community?
My name is Steve Darr. I'm the president and CEO of Thorn Tree Development Corporation and Deer Run Golf Club. First, I'd like to thank you guys for the council members for being here, taking your personal time to do this. It's kind of a thankless job sometimes, I know. I've been there. I'm here to speak possibly because of the possibility of change that might be made to Deer Run Golf Course. I'm going to give you a brief synopsis of how this happened, when it went down. 89, we purchased the land from Hartford Cloud Bank and South Dakota State Bank. The land was previously owned by Max and Helen McCord. The property was involuntarily annexed by the city of Indianola. There's a decree administered by the presiding judge, which holds several stipulations that the city must meet. These are part of the original abstract, which I have. Some of the stipulations were never met, which that's over. This parcel of land was completely overwhelmed with obnoxious weeds, holes, cuts in the ground, thorn trees by the hundreds of thousands, skunks, coons, possums, deer, coyotes, etc. The cost of transforming this ground to be able to make this a housing development, along with a golf course, was several $1 million. When we got to this point, we had engineers lay out the housing lots and an 18-hole golf course. We then spent some more money to do that. Deer Run is the main reason that there, as of today, 135 houses, 48 apartments, 46 townhomes, the Warren County Annex courthouse, multiple paved streets, utilities, all over this 305-acre parcel. We approximate an approximate cost of this is in the $150 million range. To date, this is probably the largest land development and without any doubt, one of the largest monetary investments in the city of Indianola. My point being, these improvements by our corporation and other developers of this property and properties surrounding us, they more than likely would not be here if it wasn't for the golf course. I do understand that 40 more acres of land touching the golf course previously has been rezoned from agriculture to residential. I'm sure the party involved in this is quite interested in the golf course as well. We've decided to sell the property, and the word of this got out. I was approached about the possible loss of the golf course. A large share of my life, somewhere around 30 years, has went into this. So, and then for me, I hope for it to remain as it is. I have decided to auction this land as a golf course, changing our original thoughts to sell this land or tracts of land. We firmly believe Deer Run Golf Course is a very essential part to the growth and quality of living to the people of Indianola. I was asked to be a part of presenting this opportunity to the city, which I agreed to do. A meeting was set up between In attendance with city employees, Mr. Dissel and Mr. Byland, I don't know if he's here or not, and resident and concerned citizen Charles Deckler. During this meeting, there were questions asked. When asked, I answered as best I could. I also stated if the city would make some form of a commitment, we would work with them or to find out what they needed to know. Our feelings were shown about the keeping, of course, that we felt this would be best served by it becoming a municipal property. Mr. Dissel even asked me if I would give it to the city to preserve my legacy. This meeting lasted about 30 minutes. Next, several days later, Mr. Byland called me and asked for a second meeting, which a few questions were asked. And again, I answered the best I could, reinstating, show me some intent or commitment. We would work with the city if they do have some interest in buying the golf course. I have since read an email that was sent by a council member stating that I was uncooperative. I don't think that's correct. There was never mentioned or pushed to me about tax returns or financials. I was asked by Mr. Byland how many rounds of golf we do, and I did answer that. And I just think that was just not the correct representation for that to be said. We held 3 open houses at the golf course on Saturdays, 3 weeks in a row. Not one person from the city showed up, even though these were mentioned in my meeting with Mr. Byland and Bob Dar. Further, in my 31 years of this development, I've never had one mayor, to my knowledge, and only one council member has ever set foot on this very, very large development. And next, I saw an assessment made by a council member that the zoning could not be changed or would not be changed. I don't think the word could was used. In fact, I know it wasn't used. I'll clarify that. I don't believe that should be speculated upon. I believe that's between the planning and zoning and the city council in a closed meeting. So that's all I'm going to say about that. Lastly, this property doesn't remain a golf course. I think a great disservice has been made to all residents in the city of Indianola by what I think a lot of these people are saying, going to say here. The chance of another golf course being built are very minimal, as it would take a multi-million-dollar investment in the range of probably $7 to $10 million in this day of age. We will not operate this golf course any longer. My wife has serious health issues. I'm 74 years old. We're going to retire. We sincerely hope the people get to keep this recreational facility. Golf course auction is April 9th, 2022 at the Indianola Community Center. Possibly it will sell as a golf course. That's what we're selling it as a golf course. But again, I really would love to see the city own it. And I know you have things that you have to do too, but I just think it's a great thing for this community. And I think it's proven itself by the amount of houses and townhomes and apartments and everything that's around this property. It's substantial. So thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else care to speak?
Hi, I'm Lois Tabor, and I live at 2510 West 10th Avenue in Indianola. Moved here from Davenport. So we bought this land or this house because of the golf course. It's a beautiful looking place. And I think a lot of the people that are here tonight are here for that reason, that we were hoping to keep it as a golf course. I don't know. I don't understand the financial things that are involved in it. But from what I've heard, that other cities have purchased golf courses and made private golf courses and made them into municipal golf courses such as Osceola and Pleasant View. Is that right? Pleasantville, sorry. So I hope you consider that, because it would be nice for our community and maybe it would draw more people in, but we really love it and we love living here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lois.
Anyone else care to speak? Charlie, I'm going to ask one question of you. That's currently zoned. Talk about the zoning on that, what the process has to be before any kind of changes to be made.
Yep, it is zoned as a planned unit development. It's currently called in our zoning code. So with a planned unit development, you need to submit a development plan on how that area is going to develop and look in the future. Ultimately, the Planning and Zoning Commission would start by reviewing that, make a recommendation up to the city council. It essentially creates its own zoning district on that particular piece of ground. So as of right now, the layout of the lots with the golf course is how that plan unit development is laid out. So any changes to that in the future would require an amendment to that PUD, which is a whole essentially new zoning process, rezoning process that takes place on it.
So in a current rezoning process, it has to go to the front of planning and zoning, which is a public open meeting, which, which residents can show up and state their affirmative or negative opinions of that particular move.
Yep, correct.
If planning and zoning does approve that, then it has to come before the council for their approval. Is that correct?
Yes. Even if they disprove it, it would still have to.
Still, yeah,
come to you. I think there's a stipulation in our code that says if there's a recommended denial, it does take a 2/3 majority of council to approve it, but I can check on that. There is some stipulation on some things like that, but
okay,
ultimately it still is the council's decision, no matter what the planning and zoning commission says.
okay. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I would assume it would take a non-disclosure agreement to be presented for us to provide any kind of commitment that Mr. Dar was referring to.
Yeah, I mean, I think we would want something just that some of the direction we received from council was to take a look and kind of see, you know, how the city could make something like this work. In an effort to do that, we had asked for some of the information that Mr. Gar referred to, but you know, we just were not able to really put anything together that could show exactly, you know, the staff it would take, who we'd have to hire, who we'd have to bring along, what the financial commitment would be, what the capital investment from the city would have to be, all of those items. So we just did not have that information to present.
Anything else? Yes, sir.
My name's Larry Perry. I live at 814 South Y Street. Like everybody here, I purchased a home with the hope and dream that that would remain a golf course forever, or I probably wouldn't have bought there in the first place, as most people wouldn't have. I took the liberty to contact the auctioneer today because I wanted to be certain in my heart how it was currently zoned. It's zoned under a HUD, commercial and recreational development. Is that right?
PUD, it's a PUD is what it is.
That's what you referred to?
Yep,
Okay.
yep.
I asked him if in fact at the auction that he was going to state publicly how it's currently zoned before any auction were to take place. He assured me twice that he would be certain that anybody that would have bid on that property would understand it's being sold, as Steve has said, for the purpose of remaining a golf course. And of course, anybody that might buy that with the thought of being an R1 or a residential one knows then that they probably are going to have to go through the county and the city. My question is, would the federal government be involved? None? Okay. But it would take the city, the county and the city to agree.
Just the city.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, just wanted you to know that.
Thank you. Okay, anybody else in the public comment section? Before we move on. Okay, let's move on to consent agenda. Is there anything we need to remove before we move forward, or are we okay with the consent agenda as it says? Motion to approve the consent agenda then?
So moved.
So moved. I have a second. Got a second. Motion and second. Okay, Jackie, want to call the roll?
Councilmember Beach.
Aye.
Hewlin. Aye. Parker.
Aye.
Dalby.
Aye.
Richardson.
Aye.
Schroeder.
Aye.
Move on to council reports. Kling, you get your chance to talk. Thank you, folks. Appreciate you being here.
Hello, I'm Bob Kling. I'm the Indianapolis 28E representative for Bravo Greater Des Moines. And it's nice being on this side of the podium because when I'm done, I'm going home. We are lucky because we have the director of Bravo right here with us, and she's going to give a great presentation. And she's been on Bravo almost as long as I have.
You're thinking by 3 years.
Okay. So I'd like for you to welcome Sally Dix.
So give us your name and address and everything first, if you would, please.
Sally Dix, 5310 Shriver Avenue in Des Moines.
Okay, thank you.
But happy to be down in Indianola here tonight, and thank you all so much for the opportunity to present and tell you a little bit about the work that Bravo is doing. I certainly want to thank Bob Kling for his service. He has been representing the city of Indianola for 11 years at the Bravo board. I've been there about 8, so he has me by a couple of years. But he is a strong and passionate advocate for the work that we do and for the impact that it has not only regionally, but particularly on behalf of the city of Indianola. I'm going to try. There we go. So just a couple of slides to talk things through what Bravo is. I know some of you are new to council and always like to start with a refresher. I have the benefit of getting to do this all day, every day. But for those of you who may be less aware, Bravo was formed in 2004 to be a centralized funder to support arts, culture, and heritage. We know that many cities have other things to think about and do besides investing in and supporting the arts. And we wanted to be able to create efficiencies in a regional model that we can all leverage together so that each individual community is having more impact with the funds that they're able to invest if we come at it from a regional model. We originally started as 9 local government partners investing a portion of their hotel motel taxes in Bravo. We are now 17 local governments that invest a portion of hotel motel taxes in Bravo, and this makes up 99.9% of our revenue. We intentionally do not do other fundraising. The thought process being we do not want to compete with the organizations we were formed to support. Our job is to distribute. We have the gift of a dedicated revenue stream. Our job is to distribute those funds to advance regional objectives in the arts. The thing that we probably are best known for is our competitive grant programs. That's where the vast majority of the investments come in, go out. They go right back out directly to the organizations that we were formed to support. But we're also evolving. We know that we have to stay relevant to continue to meet the needs of the community. And so over the last several years, we've also taken a position as a leader in the conversation about the role of arts and culture in advancing all of the regional priorities we're all working so hard to address. The stake that we're claiming on that piece is that arts and culture are truly tied to every regional priority. There was a time when we were primarily a pass-through organization. We got the money in, we gave the money away, and we were really proud to support art for art's sake. But there's more that arts and culture are doing for our region and for our individual communities. We want to make sure that we are advocating and ambassadors for the role that arts and culture play beyond arts for art's sake. We like to say that anything you're trying to do in your community, we can find a way that arts and culture can make it better. And we can help you with those investments and considering ways to amplify the impact. Part of the reason this is incredibly important work that we're doing is because Greater Des Moines' vibrancy is really founded on quality of life in a lot of ways. We're funding currently more than 70 nonprofit organizations across the region. And one critical thing I know you're all well aware of is the economic impact. You have to be demonstrating ROI. If you're making investments in something, you have to be able to tell the story about how that investment is driving further investment. Well, I'm delighted to show you that annually, the arts and culture organizations that Bravo is investing in are generating $185 million worth of annual economic impact. They're employing nearly 6,000 people. And we love the statistic at the bottom, $16.8 million worth of tax revenue generated annually. So the year this data was collected, Bravo invested about $3.5 million in the arts organizations. They generated $185 million worth of economic impact. Quick math, that's about 50 to 1. I would challenge you to find another investment that you're making that's generating that kind of ROI for the region. It's really important that we support these organizations and what they're doing. Although there's a lot to celebrate about arts, culture, and heritage coming back post-pandemic, it's important that you understand the impact that the COVID-19 had on the sector that we're supporting. You're seeing some numbers up there. Those are a little bit dated. Those are state level numbers. We know that a vast majority of that, though, is absorbed by the city of Des Moines. We have the largest cultural sector in the state. And so we know that a large percentage of this was absorbed in the state. One statistic that you're not seeing up there is that when asked how organizations thought they were going to come through the pandemic, 8% of them said they did not think they were going to survive. So again, quick math, 75 organizations in greater Des Moines, that's 5, 6, 7 organizations that aren't going to make it through this pandemic. Unfortunately, I don't think we're done. I don't think we've seen the end of the impact, but the good news is so far we haven't lost any organizations. And I'm proud to say that I think Bravo has played a role in that. You can see from this slide, it's a little bit hard to see. The purple line is cash coming into Bravo. Again, 99% of our revenue comes from our hotel motel tax partners. And then you can see the yellow line, which is total grant awards. What you see there is that although our revenue declined substantially as a result of the pandemic, we made record-breaking investments. We were able to, because of thoughtful financial management by our board and thoughtful planning for disruptions we didn't anticipate, but were sort of knew were coming. As good stewards of your funding, we were able to make record-breaking investments in our organizations to carry them through that time when there was no admission revenue coming in, limited membership revenue, sponsors were on hold, and certainly ticket sales were down, if not at zero, well below what was anticipated. That's the good news of that slide. The less good news of that slide is, of course, that's not sustainable. There's no way that we can continue investing more than we're bringing in at that level. Hopefully, we've been able to stabilize the sector with our investments, and now many of them are back to earning revenue on their own. And Bravo, of course, continues to be a partner, but we think the tail on this is going to be long for us. With 100%, 99.9% of our revenue coming from hotel motel taxes, we think it's going to be a while before we're back on track. What you're seeing here are estimates and projections, and everyone runs their numbers a different way. But at the bottom line, if you're looking at pre-COVID versus post-COVID, we're looking at FY24 before we're back on track had the pandemic not happened. What that amounts to for us is a loss of $6.75 million of hotel motel tax revenue coming in. Bravo's a really small staff. There's just 3 of us working there right now. We're very proud of the work that we're able to do, and we're pretty lean about how we do it. So the vast majority of that impact isn't going to be on our organization and our internal operations. It's going to be on the dollars we're able to pass through to support the organizations across the region, the ones that are in your community and the ones that your community benefits from at a regional level. So this loss is significant and something that we're trying to navigate our way through, just as everyone else is doing. The key ways we're doing that right now is we're really focused on strategic planning. Bravo's strategic plan technically expired at the end of our fiscal year last year. We run on a July 1 fiscal, just like you. We extended it for 1 year just because there was still a whole lot of uncertainty at that time and it didn't make sense. But right now we're diving in and doing strategic planning. We've engaged all of our city partners as well as all of our cultural partners, along with some groups and individuals that maybe are not seeing themselves as well served by Bravo at this time. We want to make sure that we're getting all that feedback, putting all that feedback together, and we hope to have a strategic plan approved by our board in June to begin with our July 1 start of the fiscal year. We're also looking at continued ways to encourage and inspire sector resiliency. There will be another disruption. We don't know what it is. We hope it's not COVID, another pandemic like this, but there will be another disruption. So how can we help support the sector beyond our grant making? How can we help support the sector in terms of talent development, pipeline building, capacity building? What can we do to make sure that our sector is more resilient the next time this happens? And what's our role in that as public funders? And then finally, really keeping an eye on regional impact. We know that the strength of our region relies on the strength of our individual municipalities. Our role is really to look at that top level though, and make sure that we're making broad regional investments that are going to be beneficial to all of the communities that we serve. So those are some of the ways that we are trying to be good stewards of the investments we're getting from the city of Indianola and our other 16 communities. I'm really grateful for your investment and for the opportunity to do the work that I do. I'm happy to take any questions. I'm sure Bob would also be happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. Does anybody on the council have questions?
I just appreciate the economic impact numbers.
And I appreciate your information. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thank you for coming down. Anybody else have any questions?
I'm sorry,
Go ahead.
Go ahead. You talked about regional impact. Can you tell us a little bit about how Indianola benefits from the? Okay.
Well, I can tell you right off, the amount of money we spend or pay, it's not our money. It's people who visit Indianola, stay in the hotel, and that money, and for us, it's a fairly small amount that goes to Bravo. But in return, we've received over the years, some years it's been as much as $600,000, a year for the opera, for that small, I think it's $40,000 for that small investment. And you can find another investment like that. I mean, it's been fantastic for our community. Not only are we supporting the opera, but once again, that money is turned over and over and over again.
And what I think it isn't the yearly impact the opera has on our economy, and it's like 4 million, roughly 4 to 5 million. So
Yeah.
so that investment of 40 some thousand goes a long way. So
I also think, again, looking at it from a regional lens, that's a huge benefit to the city of Indianola. Indianola puts in about $40,000 a year, plus or minus, depending on the year. And Des Moines Metro Opera receives operational grant funding from us. So annually, it's a little bit more than $215,000. If you measure by dollars out of Indianola and then the dollars into Indianola, you're coming out pretty far ahead. But that's not the story we love to tell. The story we like to tell is that's Bob's story, and that's great. And we love that he represents the city of Indianola. Our story, though, is we think the residents of Indianola benefit greatly from having a world-class art center in the city of Des Moines, from having a world-class performing arts organization in Des Moines Performing Arts. We think they benefit from the 11 local theater companies. We're also supporting a local theater company. We recently added the Carousel Theater here in Indianola, recently added them as a partner. Well, all of our communities have local theaters, and we think it really benefits the region to have that breadth and depth, those 70 cultural organizations. Even though they may not all be headquartered in Indianola, we think the residents of Indianola clearly benefit from having those amenities and the different choices of things to participate in and still be able to live in Indianola where they choose to live. So that's part of the story that we think is genuine and authentic, but truly benefits the regional residents, not just community by community.
And I really believe in the whole regional aspect, because everybody here knows that you try to sell Indianola to somebody else. Maybe, boy, look how close we are to Des Moines, and look at all the things we can go to in Des Moines. We don't have our own art center or symphony or all that. The great things that we brag about having in Des Moines, but we're here. But we need to help pay for those things. So, and Bravo is one way to do that.
and one other thing too, that over the years that we picked up along the way is that in the past, we really haven't been able to get involved in any of the grants because we didn't have an art commission. So one of the last things Bob did was make sure we got an art commission. So now we can use that, leverage that to be able to get some more grants for our public art and stuff for the community. So
Carousel Theater, isn't that Carousel Theater part of that was a result of that as well?
We have a bunch of different grant programs, and we're trying to continue to evolve and expand to make sure that we're meeting the needs. We have 17 communities. You're all different. You all have different needs. We've added some additional grant programs and some additional funding opportunities that would make a variety of communities more competitive for the resources that are available.
Well, I can't speak for the rest of the council, but I appreciate the slides you had here and the information you provided, because it gives not only us, but the residents and everybody else a real opportunity to see what the return on investment is. So thank you very much.
Thank you again for the opportunity, and thank you for your continued support.
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah. Bob, you're up
Yep.
on Public Arts Commission update.
Upon reinstating the Indianola Fine Arts Commission, one of the first things the commission did was to review the old bylaws, see what was applicable, what wasn't, create new bylaws that would be appropriate to the name change that was approved, and that's the Indianola Public Arts Commission, or our IPAC. One of the first things we've done is to compile a list of local artists, including musicians, performers, dancers, etc. And we're still trying to compile that list, and we keep posting that site, periodically, trying to get people who are artists and crafts people to at least sign up and give us your name. You don't have to pay anything. We're not gonna, put you on some committee, but we want to make sure we know who are the artists out there that we can communicate with, not only to give them information, but to get information back. The group also, one of the first projects the group really did is place a public piano in downtown. We've acquired a second one that the high school art club is now painting, and it will be placed somewhere also. So this summer, if you are a piano player, we ask that whenever you walk by, get on one of those pianos, give a little quick recital, so we don't have just kids pounding on it. You know, we want to hear, we've got enough musicians in town, we want to hear music. Let's see, we coordinated with the North River Arts Council. Mark True from Carlisle's the president. I happen to be the vice president. And it's NRAC, which is North River Arts Council. It's a group of artists from Indianola, Carlisle, and the Norwalk area. And we coordinated to commission a public arts master plan. Several of the cities in the metro, quite a few of them, have established a public arts master plan. Because of the cost, it was kind of prohibitive for these three cities, but we've worked together and coordinated our resources together. And we've commissioned the creative group, and they are putting together a master plan for all three of our cities, Indianola, Norwalk, and Carlisle. They've been conducting interviews and focus groups in each city, and I just received notification today that they're ready to discuss their findings and outline themes that would be a basis for recommendations for the arts and master plan in all three communities. And the last thing that we're just working on as of 1 week, the National Balloon Classic, along with the Warren County Fair and Indianola Hometown Pride, have asked us to bring back the art fair. What we're doing, so this is a project IPAC is doing, and it is now the Indianola Summer Art Festival, and coordinating with the balloons and the fair. It's going to be in Buxton Park, which will be beautiful. We're not going to go anywhere near the square, maybe in the future, but not right now. It'll be July 30th, which is the day of the parade. And they are planning to have the parade come through town and end up at Buxton Park, which will be a beautiful place for an art fair. So we're really hurrying, trying to get stuff. We've got everything set up, the applications. We're kind of late a little bit because usually artists will have all their summer schedule filled out by now, but there's not a lot of activities on that date for art festivals. So we've advertised, we are a featured event on festival.com. I've already notified 100 artists. We're just trying to get the information out there so people will apply. So we will eventually need volunteers, but we think it'll be a great thing to bring it back.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Questions?
Yeah, Bob, on that, I am at a antique mall in Des Moines a couple days a week, just to volunteer. If you want to get me some flyers or whoever's involved, be glad to set those up there as well. And I think there's a lot of artists that go into that place.
Yes, because that's one thing we're going to make sure we're looking. Eventually it kind of turned into, well, it was crafts, and then it was, somebody, a junk dealer, and it is going to be truly an art festival and with artwork. So yeah, anybody else who would like flyers or the website, I'll be glad to make sure everybody gets.
Is that website linked to on
It's
our
on our
city-
Yes,
on
it's
our
on our-
city website? And I don't know if it's on the chambers or not yet either.
Oh, I haven't, is it? I don't know. I haven't got that far.
We will get it up for you.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bob.
That's good.
Okay, I'm up for the circular report. I just was talking with AP a little bit too about that. He's on the technical side. The meeting wasn't very long. What most of the time spent on that meeting was talking about legislation that's currently in front of members, either the House or the Senate, or onto the governor. One thing that came up and probably had a little bit more discussion than anything was a bill that went through the Senate, passed the Senate, that cities would not be allowed to place limits on time and dates for fireworks during the holiday, summer holiday. I did talk to our representative about that a little bit and suggested maybe she really want to take a look at that. I don't know about you folks. I've got some veterans that live next to me that have some PTSD pretty badly, and they either leave town and come back at 11 o'clock that night because they know the fireworks are supposed to be off and stopped. If this is going to happen, then we won't have any ability to control that. So that's something that we might want to take a look at and make sure that we talk to our legislator about that. They've also reevaluated, or I guess re-estimated, would be a better way to put it, our portion that we'll receive on an annual basis. There's been a little more revenue come in. I just checked with AP. I think it's in the $20,000 to $25,000 range, which is good news, which means that the grant that we get this time for K Street and a couple of other projects gets paid off a little quicker. And then we can turn around a little bit later down the road and a little sooner than maybe anticipated in the past. So those are good news. That's all good news on those things. And that's my report on SERPTA. So we also then have a report on Councilmember Buell.
Thank you. Let's see here. Charlie was there. Also, I'm reporting on the Warren County Economic Development meeting that was held on March 23rd. There is going to be a capital campaign. Warren County Economic Development Board and staff will be kicking off a multi-year private investment fundraising campaign this fall. A housing study is being done. They're exploring entities to contract for a county-wide housing study with community breakdowns. May be able to use the newly established Mid-Iowa Development Alliance for that. Central Iowa Housing Trust Fund, the 2022 Central Iowa Housing Trust Fund grant awards were recently approved, and approximately $55,000 was awarded to the Heel House right here in Indianola. That's exciting. Professional Developers of Iowa is holding a spring training conference. That's in May 17th in Coralville. Rachel was really excited to announce that our very own Casey Blake will be in a video for that, welcoming the economic development professionals from across the street because it's the spring training themed. The strategic plan draft was distributed, and we went through that, and we were asked to review and provide some feedback. They're making a lot of progress on that, and it will be looked at for approval in the next meeting in June. And then the Greater Des Moines Partnership annual Washington, D.C. trip is coming up. I know that was something that we discussed at our meeting as well, and they're also planning to send representation to that. Revolving loan fund, there was discussion offering a 0% interest and or deferred payments for businesses affected by the March 5th tornado. Specifically, there was 3 businesses that were pretty highlighted from Norwalk area that were impacted pretty negatively, and there was definitely support, it sounded like, for doing something to help them out. Site certification, the Sternquist Industrial Development property was invited to step 2 of site certification program. Step 2 materials were submitted March 31st, and they expect to soon hear back if they're able to move forward to step 3. And then Warren County Philanthropic Partnership board is meeting here next week, and they're going to be scoring the grant applications that have come in. They said that applications will be notified shortly after, and there's approximately $101,000 available to the grant out this year. So they were excited, but there was a lot of requests that came in this year also. And WCPP will keep this fund open indefinitely for the Warren. They have a Warren County Disaster Recovery Fund, and they decided they were going to keep that open indefinitely. There was talk about closing that, but after what happened with the tornadoes, they were thinking that that would be a bad idea. And Warren County Leadership Institute class is kicking off for I think it was the 2022 class is just kicking off, and their first stop was going to be right here in Indianola at Cementech. And the final thing is Warren County Hometown Pride Tourism. Lauren Ditzler gave a nice report of the progress that Hometown Pride has made in the county over the last 4 years of the 5-year program. And discussion was had about the support for the groups going forward. And Lauren's contract is up in October, and she is not going to be continuing in that position. So.
Thank you.
You bet.
Appreciate it. All right. Mayor's not here for a community update. So I think we'll move on to the next item.
And really quick, she was back on. She just texted me and said she had to jump off as her son was having another race, but I know we have the Downtown Square Commission first anyway. So
we can back to that.
Yeah, I'll see if she is.
Hey, Charlie, I'll let you handle this and kick this off.
Yeah, thank you. I don't really need to give too much of a summary of the criteria that was approved to be on the Downtown Square Commission. It is on the screen here above if we need to go back to it at all. One thing I did want to point out, I know during our last meeting, we kind of did discuss some criteria that we wanted to look at as far as the makeup of this board. After we discussed the criteria at the council level, we got into the council policy folder and realized much of the same criteria that you had gone over at our last meeting was actually already in the council policy document on what the council should be looking at when they make appointments to this. We've highlighted that up here, but I wanted to point out a few of them, if not all of them, but first of all, what is the current gender balance of the board or commission? That is something that we have to follow. That is a state law that states you cannot have more than 50% plus one of any one sex on that board or commission. So for this one, the most you could have of any one sex would be 5 individuals. There is an exception, Doug, correct me if I'm wrong. I think if you have an opening for more than 3 months, that you're able then to not follow that. They do give you a little bit of a grace period on that, but we'll go over some of the breakdown of the candidates we've received for this. The area of town in which the candidate resides, are they all represented? We talked town in this because it's more general. On this one, we did talk about it being in that square area. So I think that fits with that. Are there too many members with similar occupations? Should other occupations be represented against different business types that we wanted on this commission? So that speaks to that. Are there potential conflicts of interest if a certain candidate were chosen to serve? Doug maybe can elaborate on this a little bit more if that is a question, but on this particular one, since they are a recommending body, unless there is a direct conflict of interest or anything that individually, such as a facade grant program that may benefit one of those members at that point, they would have to abstain from voting. But the general discussion that takes place on the square, I don't think we'd have any conflict of interest on that. What expertise or experience does the candidate bring? Does the candidate serve on more than one board or commission? If they do, how long has that person served on the board of a commission? If they are currently serving on the board of commission, how effective have they been in serving on the board and commission? And if they're currently serving on a board and commission, has their attendance been acceptable? And then the last one, only one member of an immediate family member may be on the same board or commission at any one time. There is one other criteria there that deals with staff being on a board or commission, but we didn't put that on there because we don't have any staff members who have applied for this particular one. So hopefully everybody's able to see this up here, but I wanted to quick kind of give in just general area of where we did receive applications from. For the most part, the colors up there are green. There's 3 that have different colors. The first one is the orange one on top there. The red one and then the yellow one. The reason those are different colors is because the person who applied actually has interest in those 2 properties on there. So we wanted to make sure that we covered that. For particular on the one in the north, Michael Eagle with the Des Moines Metro Opera. He's part of the Metro Opera, but he also lives within this area. So we wanted to point out those 2 areas. Erin Freeberg owns Feed and Foster, and she owns Adorn, so she's shown in the red. And then Erica Robert owns 2 Adorn locations, so those are shown in those yellows right there. Does that make sense to everybody? Or excuse me, I'm sorry, what did I say? Adorn, I'm sorry. I apologize. Yeah, so quickly wanted to go over the list of candidates. Those were included in your agenda. I'm not going to go over people in particular. I gave everybody a printout of this information here. So the ones in yellow are the one from staff standpoint that we would recommend that the council look at. Really what this shows is that these are the people that have different business backgrounds or different interests in the square. The ones that are not highlighted are the businesses who are involved in retail. We had 8 people who have retail businesses or retail interest within the square that applied for this. And again, from council's direction that we look at a variety of business types. We didn't include those in our recommendation because ultimately I think council needs to look at these lists of those leftover, those retail businesses and decide which one of those they want to have. So just want to make sure that makes sense. So the other thing, or the other portion of our recommendation, obviously, we had 15 people apply in total, only 4 males. As I mentioned, we cannot have any more than 5 members of one sex on that. So the 4 males that applied, we automatically recommended them moving forward because they fit that criteria to create a gender balance. Then there was 3 females that we had recommended. And again, those were those 3 females who were not involved on the retail side. The one who was a resident, she had a home business within the downtown square. The other one who was just a landlord. So she owns property, rents that out to a few individuals, but she does not own a business on the square per se. She just owns the property. And then the other one was a restaurant owner on the square who had applied. So when we looked at this, then I looked at kind of some recommendations on some terms as well. I can tell you when I looked at that, the biggest thing was for us, again, we had 4 males apply for it. So we wanted to make sure, just knowing that there's probably more female interest within the square. Most of the business owners, I think, are more female on there. So we wanted to make sure those males, because we may have trouble in the future at having more males on this commission, that we had 2 males be in that first initial 3-year term. And then from there, really, it was based off of when we got the applications in. So if you submitted your application first, we put you in a 3-year term, and then everybody else kind of sliding down was 2 and 1. What I did do, though, is I left opportunity for the last 2 people that we need to appoint on there. If you follow our recommendation, one of them be for a 1-year term, one of them be for a 2-year term. That way we can split that retail business interest within those terms. So really quick, looking at a map, the ones that we recommended are shown on the screen here, kind of with a checkbox in there. The ones who, the retail businesses that we still need to look at are the ones that are shown here on this map. And then lastly, if I put them together again, you can see the ones that we're recommending with those checkboxes, and the ones that we still need some direction on. Those last few spots would be the ones that do not have the checkboxes in them.
So you're saying we only have 2 spots to fill?
Yes,
outside
there
of the
were
yellow?
7 that we recommended out of the 9-member commission. So there's 2
Oh,
spots
9.
left.
Okay.
Yep.
Sorry, I had 10 in my head, so
Yep.
that's what was throwing me off. Okay.
I would disagree a little bit with the recommendation. I think the square, we want the square to be retail. So I feel as though we need to have a little bit more balance from the, or representation from retail. That would be my opinion. We want it to be a vibrant retail area.
And again, just to be clear, our recommendation was kind of coming off some of the discussion that we had. You do not have to follow staff's recommendation on this at all. So I was just trying to kind of initiate, I guess, the discussion on it.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate that. I just, that's,
Well, if we, to your point, if we keep the staff recommendation here, we do have one of the males is in personal and consumer retail as well. We would then appoint, probably, if your suggestion holds, would appoint 2 more out of that, which make up a third of the board or commission would be personal and consumer service. Is that right?
On the retail side, yes, that is right. And I forget, I did fail to mention one of the males is in retail sales. So really quick, and one thing I guess I wanted to touch on, the business type that we listed here is exactly how it's listed in our zoning code under uses. So we wanted to make sure we were consistent kind of with some codes that we're using within the city. So that's how we determined what type of use they are.
Sure. And back to the state code, or to recommend, or is it the code, state code, or our policy that says that we try to maintain a balance on the types of people we have on?
No, that was based out of council's policy,
Okay.
not state code.
Okay, out of council policy.
Yes, yes, the gender balance.
The
is
gender
state
balance,
code,
what I'm
yes.
talking about.
Yep.
Yeah, okay. Any other questions?
So is that why we're making it a 9, or did we decide on a 9-person commission? I thought it was 10. I thought I did agree with that. I said 8, but
Yeah,
but I thought it kind of got left at 8, at 10. So
it's mainly the way I've looked at this. I know when I got here, planning commission was 10 and we tried to get to an odd number, but odd numbers help a little bit more with making a quorum for a meeting.
Gotcha.
So that's
Okay.
why we've always done it. At least I've always gone that direction.
that's perfect. That works.
Okay.
All right. Sorry.
Does anybody have any other questions on this, or does anybody want to make a motion to accept the 7 that are recommended here, or how do we want to proceed?
We have to do them one at a time.
Probably should.
I'd move we vote separately.
Yeah, I
On
agree.
each person.
Well, we have. Yeah, we have.
Right, but I mean,
Yeah.
not based on staff, I mean, not that.
And just to
I'm just saying,
clarify
don't take
again,
staff
the,
recommendation or
with the
staff's.
staff recommendation, it would also include possibly 2 additional
Yes.
retail.
Yeah.
And as far as the gender balance goes, the male side has already been taken
Yes.
care of, right?
Yes.
Okay.
correct.
Charlie, is there anybody on here that's currently serves on any boards and commissions?
I think Aaron Freeberg was the only one we talked about that. And I think there was nobody from Hometown Pride that was currently on the list. And I did double check that today, but Aaron Freeberg does sit on the Planning and Zoning Commission.
What were the criteria you had up there for? You go back to that slide that shows that.
Hold on one second. How long have they been on the board and commission? If they're currently serving, how effective have they been on the board and commission? And if they're currently serving, has their attendance been acceptable?
So what are the answers to all? Do you have answers? for
Erin, as far as how long she's been on, if you give me 1 second, I can find it on our website. I think she's been on 1 term and is in her 2nd term, but I don't know if she filled a vacant term initially or not, but hold on 1 second, because we have all of that on our website. Actually, the current term she's on began on July 1st, 2020. I would have to double check. I don't have that information, but my guess would be she's on a 5-year term. So she initially started in 15 and then carried over to 20.
Seems all right.
Okay, yeah, so she's on year 7 essentially on that.
Okay.
What's her attendance then?
You can track that, so give me 1 second on that as well.
I've got it. It was on the Planning and Zoning Commission Annual Report for
Yes, it would have
2021.
been, yep.
Present 7, absent 5 for a 58% attendance rate.
58%.
58.
Just double check that on mine. I'm sure that the report was right. I just want to make sure that I don't have anything.
It's from your report. I hope,
Yep,
right?
yep, it is. That's exactly what I had on here. You said. I wanted to check myself essentially, try to, but yes, that is correct.
Okay. So we just start on as the list is here, Charlie, or how do we want to go with it?
I mean, I guess I would recommend maybe first we've got the 7 that we recommended and it sounds like we want to talk about that individually, but maybe have a discussion on who at least the next 2 are, how you want to go about that process. I don't know if the council wants to get into a situation where you're voting on everybody individually.
I don't love that idea.
No, I think we ought to, I'm gonna, unless I hear any differently from anybody, let's just take the 7 that they've got highlighted here, start with
I'm
that.
not okay with that.
Huh?
I'm not. I disagree with that too.
Okay.
I think we need to be a vibrant retail community, and I don't think retail is represented enough. I
Okay.
don't like voting individually, but I think.
We have to vote individually.
Well, right, but he just said we could, he didn't want to.
No,
so-
I was gonna say that we start by the first person on the list here and vote individually.
Okay.
And then go down to the next one on the list, and the next one on
Yep,
that are highlighted in yellow
Gotcha.
is what I'm sorry if I wasn't clear.
Misunderstood.
Yeah, I'm
Okay.
sorry. Sorry
All
about
right.
that.
So start with the recommendations.
Yeah,
Okay,
okay, so the first recommended person is Jamie Parrott, is that correct?
yes.
So, hang on a second. So we don't have to follow what's in the
You can
agenda.
actually, the chair can move. items
Okay,
on
all
the
right.
agenda.
I just wanted to make sure, because I know we got 2 different lists here. and I'm like,
I do, yeah.
Yeah.
I'd
What
rather
was
go by
posted
this,
or-
this is confusing to me.
We just need to announce who we're doing.
Okay,
And the
perfect.
chair
I just
has
want to
the
make sure.
authority to
Okay,
do that.
yeah, I
And
don't
really
care.
quick, this, I went through and this was, the order of this was changed a few times, but I think what I did is I sorted it by the location. So that's where this order is taking place from on this list.
Oh, I
So
see.
just know that that is not a
Action,
preference
yeah.
or anything like that. It was just how the Excel sheet was.
It is tough.
So one more time, let's make sure we're on the same page here. Are we okay to walk through the yellow people,
Yep.
the yellow highlighted folks first? Is that consensus of everybody here?
That's my mind.
Okay, okay. So the first one then is gonna be Jamie Parrott. We have a motion to approve or disapprove, or how do we
No, we
want?
have to be in the
Yeah,
positive, right?
right, yeah, motion to
Okay,
approve.
All right, well, I'll make a motion to approve then, so we can have a
Okay.
conversation.
okay, got a motion second, so conversation, discussion on Jamie Parrott.
Second.
We already have.
Already got it.
Christine.
You're good.
Hear you, sorry.
Seeing no discussion, Jackie, you want to call a roll in, please?
Councilmember Dalby,
Aye.
Richardson,
Aye.
Schroeder,
Nay.
Beach.
Aye.
Hewlin,
Aye.
Parker.
Aye.
Okay. Michael Egley. We have a motion and a second.
Move to approve.
Move to approve.
Second.
Second. By Parker.
And
Any discussion?
So I have a question on his, and I mentioned this to you earlier, because on here you show that he's marked as a business owner, but he's not actually a business owner. He's just solely invested for the simple fact he does live within the area, but I mean,
Yeah, and I went back and looked and he was, and I don't have it on me right now, but he's essentially the director of the Des Moines Metro Opera. Again, we didn't have anything specifically definitions in the ordinance to define what a property owner and or a business owner was. Des Moines Metro Opera is obviously run by a board independently, kind of similar to what the city would be, where he is kind of the chief executive officer essentially of that organization. So that's why we put him on under both property and business owners. That's debatable by council, obviously, because we do not have definitions on that. So
I guess one of my concerns with that could be conflict of interest, but you're stating that that shouldn't be an issue then. I mean, he is the director.
They can take
and we
that
make
up.
a large contribution for a year, so.
You can basically take that up on a case by case.
It's just like this, if you had you're on a commission on board and you had a conflict and you have to abstain.
yeah, this commission is not going to be discussing any funding into that organization necessarily. What it would be is maybe one-off grants for the downtown square that maybe the Des Moines Metro Opera would apply for. But again, if that was the case, then if he was on it, he should be abstaining from that vote. Same with any of these other businesses that would be on there. Yep.
Business, yeah.
I think he represents well.
Well,
What happens
one
if
of
we
the-
don't have a, because if we don't, that only leaves 3 males, which is gonna be a 6-to-3 ratio, and that wouldn't work.
Well, we couldn't, we could still only do 5 females at that point because we'd have to wait that 3-month period to see if we had anybody else.
Well, and something else that I think to take into consideration is that when we spoke about this last time, some of the criteria that other commissions have, and I said maybe kind of further down the road, included arts, music, historic landmarks, which I think that he has, an appreciation and obviously a skill set for that, which I think would be valuable to that commission.
I agree. Well said.
Any other,
Yeah.
very good point. Any other discussion, Michael? Jackie, would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Beach,
Nay.
Hewlin,
Aye.
Parker,
Aye.
Dalby,
Aye.
Richardson,
Aye.
Schroeder.
Aye.
Okay, Valerie Steckel deal. Is our next one? Do we have a motion in a second? Martha moves. I'll second. Any discussion?
And so this is just because owned property.
Mhm.
Okay.
From staff standpoint, we felt, again, different kind of interest in the square. Doesn't own a business, but owns the property where there's other businesses there. So we just thought that maybe would be a kind of a different voice for the commission.
I'm looking at this. Aren't several of these people though also like essentially landlords because they own their building as well?
Most of them are, I mean, you could consider that, but I think most of them are operating out of theirs. I'm trying to see if I can.
Whereas this person just owns the property,
Yeah.
does not operate.
Does
Yeah.
not operate.
So going on to some of the retail ones that are there, for example, Pamela, I know she owns the building. She does lease it to another person who's also in there. I think that might be the only one who does that. But for the most part, they're property/business owners.
Any other discussion? Jackie, call the roll.
Councilmember Dalby,
No.
Richardson,
Aye.
Schroeder,
Nay.
Beach,
Nay.
Hewlin,
Aye.
Parker.
Nay.
Okay, motion fails. Amanda Rippiger is the next one up for approval or disapproval. We have a motion and a second.
I'll motion.
We have a
Second.
move. Okay, motion and a second. Any discussion? Jackie, call the roll.
Councilmember Hewlin,
Aye.
Parker,
Aye.
Dalby,
Aye.
Schroeder.
Aye.
I'm sorry, Richardson,
Aye. That's okay.
Beach.
Aye.
Okay. Move on down to Tim Bryan. Do I have a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion.
What's his business?
I'm sorry, I don't know.
DJ.
Yeah.
DJ service, and I
Yes.
think there's other services too, but yeah, mostly DJ type stuff.
Okay.
He is located next to Pete's,
Yes.
or maybe in between.
Yes.
On the north side of Pete's?
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
Does he own the building too, or just? rent it?
yes.
He does?
Yep.
Okay.
Any further discussion? Jackie, call the roll.
Councilmember Parker,
Aye.
Dalby,
Aye.
Richardson,
Aye.
Schroeder,
Aye.
Beach,
Aye.
Hewlin.
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay, down to Rob Keller. Motion in a second.
So move.
Second.
Rob Keller, any discussion? Hearing none. Jackie, call the roll.
Councilmember Dalby,
Aye.
Richardson,
Aye.
Schroeder,
Aye.
Beach,
Aye.
Hewlin,
Aye.
Parker.
Aye.
Move on down to, motion carries, down to Doug Gomer. Do I have a motion in a second?
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
And motion in a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. Jackie, call the roll.
Councilmember Dalby,
Aye.
Richardson,
Aye.
Schroeder,
Aye.
Beach,
Aye.
Hewlin,
Aye.
Parker.
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay.
So that leaves three.
Make, huh?
That
Yeah,
leaves three
three.
openings still.
Yep. So do I have a
Do we,
motion?
do we just make a motion based on just, can somebody just say a name, or do we want to go, do we need to go down the list?
Why don't you go ahead and again, take it out of order and someone's make a
Let's make
motion.
a motion. here.
Okay, I would make a motion that Cammy Haynes be approved.
We have a second.
A second.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion?
That's the business on, it's on the north side of the square, right? And then-
Yeah,
New.
new, yep, Newton Square in the last 2 years.
Okay. Hearing no discussion, Jackie, call the roll.
Councilmember Dalby,
Aye.
Richardson,
Aye.
Schroeder.
Aye.
Beach,
Nay.
Hewlin,
Aye.
Parker.
Aye.
I am going to, motion carries. I'm going to move that, I'd like to talk about Erica Roberts. Move we approve her.
Second.
Have a second. Discussion.
So it said that she owned 3 businesses.
Two.
Roots and Roots Unclaimed, and, okay, I thought it mentioned a third one, or it said she had a
She building owner?
I thought there was a third one too. Tossel.
Tassel, yeah.
Oh, no, she's not anymore. Sweet.
One thing we didn't do, Charlie,
Oh,
maybe I
she's
should
sweet
ask
home.
Doug this question. We didn't talk about the term of office. Do we need to go back and finish this up and with the term of office on that and then go back and do the last one?
Yeah, I think that's good. I didn't think about that either.
Okay,
So we'll have to have a 3, 2, and 1, right?
Can we do that as one motion at the end?
Yes.
Okay.
we do that as one motion at the end.
Let's do
Takes that for-
Okay, we can do that. So currently we have a motion for Erica Roberts. We have a second. Is there any further discussion?
Did someone say she was or wasn't a business owner?
She is a
No,
business owner.
she-
She's a business owner. She does not own the building,
Not a
no.
building owner.
She has two businesses.
And let me, I'm gonna pull up her application real quick, just to. I was only aware of the two. Brenda, you said that, was there another one?
Yeah, Smith Home, I believe, is also next to her in the same building,
It's her mom.
which is her mother.
Yeah, her mom.
Yeah, the business owners that she has listed here are Roots Reclaimed, and is it Tousled is the other one?
Oh, the hair price, yeah.
Yeah.
Right, that's also there.
Any further discussion? Jackie, call the roll, please.
Councilmember Schroeder,
It's really tough. Nay.
Beach,
Aye.
Hewlin,
Aye.
Parker,
Aye.
Dalby,
Aye.
Richardson.
Aye.
I'll make a motion that we approve Aaron Freeberg.
Second.
The reason I say that is as a business, since we voted down that Valerie deal, this is another business and property owner, so. Two locations.
I have a concern with her attendance at the Planning and Zoning Commission. I really feel that 58%, I just don't. That's, we're asking for somebody to put a lot of time and energy into this. And I just feel like we need somebody that's going to be there all the time. So
I think given the choice, she resigned from that. I'm much more interested in her. She's very creative. she's an Indianola promoter, she's marketing, communications, she just has all the skills that we need on that commission. And it'd be disappointing not to support her efforts on the square. And we're talking about the square here.
Her buildings are very attractive buildings. I also share the same concerns about the attendance rate on the planning and zoning, but and I know she runs a couple of nice businesses on the square.
It'd be really sad not to.
I guess the only thing that I don't discount what you're saying, but I guess maybe I am a little bit, but I guess I don't know how you can rate one person just because they're on another commission
Right.
differently than you would all the rest of them.
She has
Because we
great
don't know what
expertise
they're,
for this
I mean, we
area.
might have people that we approve that may never, so I mean, I guess that seems a little unfair.
Well,
I
Well,
guess.
it's part of our guidelines. Though.
Yeah, but that's for other, I mean, I get it, but yeah, okay.
We gotta think about what's best for the square. She is creative, successful, ambitious. I think she brings everything that we want on a square commission, and she brings so much to the table.
But if we're gonna look at something like that, why not look at somebody like Wendy, who has had a business on the square for 31 years? She is probably most vested.
I think that's gonna come down to personal opinion, I mean, I don't have anything against Wendy at all. I don't have anything against Erica. I mean, Erica's a friend, we've been friends for years. It comes down to, we only have a few spots left, and, or one spot left, right?
Two.
We got one left.
One left. I mean, I would really hate to not see Erin on there. She has so many ideas. I think that I would be very disappointed to not have support for her.
Well, the only thing and John, you make a good point, but I think at the same time, past history does reflect a little bit about the commitment to being on one of the boards and commissions. And so I do have a little bit of an issue with that.
Did she also
That's
serve
only
on the
one
street
Can I,
tree?
I understand, but I think if we just went through a big process this last weekend, talking about past, what people have done in the past and other things like that. So having gone through all of that this past weekend and looking at this situation, and I have nothing against her at all. I really don't know her. But I think that based on what past practice has been, I have a concern. So from that perspective, that's my point.
And I would say past practice, she's been one of the biggest supporters of our square project, which has been a very controversial issue in our community. I find it very upsetting not to support her.
Any further discussion?
I guess for me, it just comes down to longevity. A lot of the people that we've approved for this commission are people that, are fairly new to the square. So for me, I would like to see somebody who's had a longer vested. And that's the point of this.
Any further discussion? Jackie, call the roll, please.
Councilmember Dalby,
Aye.
Richardson,
Nay.
Schroeder,
Aye.
Beach,
Nay.
Hewlin,
Aye.
Parker.
Aye.
Motion carries. So we've got our 9. So we now will need a motion to figure out the terms of office.
Well, and really quick before we get into motion, I think based off the recommendations we have forward, we have 2 people recommended for 3-year, 2 people for 2-year, and 2 people for 1 year. So the retail ones, the last 3 that we made, I think if we can just figure out, if you're comfortable going with staff's recommendation on that, then we can discuss terms for those last 3, either being 1 year, 2 year, or 3 year. And I think we have it pretty much figured out.
Did you do it before in the order their applications
That
came
was
in?
how they
Can
came
we
in,
just
yep.
follow that same?
Yep, so if that was the case on those ones, Aaron would be the 3-year term. Cammy would be the 2 and Erica would be the 1.
And just because they're one doesn't mean that they can't.
Exactly, and that just means that their renewal is gonna come up first. Yes.
Because really 1 year is not, there's a lot of work to do in the first year.
Right.
But
And Erica will be good. She'll bring a lot to the table too.
Somebody make a motion then.
So moved.
that we.
That we follow the same staff
recommendation.
recommendation as
Okay.
was in the previous.
Yeah, so really quick, this is what it would be. It would be Jamie Parrott for 1 year, a 1-year term, Michael Eagle for a 3-year, Aaron Freeberg for a 3-year, Amanda Ripperger for a 2-year, Tim Bryan for a 1-year, Erica Roberts for a 1-year, Cammie Haynes for a 2-year, Rob Keller for a 3-year, and Doug Gomer for a 2-year.
And that's your motion, Heather?
Yes, as read. Thank you.
You're welcome.
What you said.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, Jackie, please call the roll.
Councilmember Parker,
Aye.
Dalby,
Aye.
Schroeder,
Aye.
Beach,
Aye.
Richardson,
Aye.
Hewlin.
Aye.
All right, so for the remainder of the folks, do we say that we thank them for their service and we do not need to vote on this, or what do we do, Doug?
I think I would close the slate and just indicate and motion that the.
I would make a motion that we close the slate of candidates and we thank those that have applied, send a letter out thanking those folks.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any further discussion? Jackie, call the roll, please.
Councilmember Schroeder,
Aye.
Beach,
Aye.
Hewlin,
Aye.
Parker,
Aye.
Dalby,
Aye.
Richardson.
So real quick before we move away from this, so we run into a situation in the next 6 months, somebody backs out, it's not gonna be able to do it. Will we just put out that, hey, we'd like, or will we contact, I guess, I know we just closed the slate, but how do you do that?
Yeah, I think, and Jackie, correct me if I'm wrong, normally we keep the applicants on file so we could reach out to them, see if they're still interested and bring their application forward.
Okay,
So,
I just want to make sure
No, let's-
everybody was okay
Let's
with
make sure
that
we put that in the
process.
notes, Jackie, please. Thank you.
Because I know everybody's excited, but we want to make sure that, in case something changes,
Okay.
so.
we got it.
Do we have the mayor on the horn here?
I think she is, but I don't know if she
I am. Yep, I'm here.
Okay. You want to give a mayor's report?
Okay. I do. Yeah. First off, I want to say thanks for the good dialogue there. And I'm really excited that we got 9 candidates on the downtown commission. And yes, I think we've got some other really great people who applied. So keeping their files and their applications is good. Last week, this is more for the community, not so much you at the table, but last week we, did our city interviews and there's so many people to thank for that. I want to thank the 3 candidates, Eric Hansen, Benjamin Reeves, and Chad Weaver, as well as Charlie and Jackie. I know that you guys did so much for this, and I know a lot of other staff did. And our stakeholders, and Courtney too, yes, our stakeholders, our staff and council colleagues and GovHR. I think it's a great time, and we hope that this progresses to something really positive. Yesterday I had an opportunity to go to the 40-year anniversary for the Helping Hand. It was phenomenal to hear the stories. They had a video, gave a little bit about the history. I'll be attending, and Jackie, I will respond to your email on this, the Municipal Leadership Academy with a focus on economic development, community betterment, and acting strategically on April 23rd. We had Mayor's Youth Council this week. It's a business meeting where we're discussing all the final details regarding Bike Fest coming up in June. And then April 20th, Absolute Concrete. And Charlie, I don't know if you're coming to this or not, but they're going to take a behind the scenes streetscapes tour. So going to probably get really dirty, but they're actually going to see what it's like behind the gates and maybe some of those holes that we have. The last thing that I have is I brought it up last meeting and just wanted to see if anybody had thought about the Washington, DC trip. And if you're interested, I guess let me know now and we can work with, I know Charlie, you're going, and then if maybe there's not 2 people who want to go, maybe we only send 1, but if anyone's interested, just go ahead, I guess now, speak now or forever hold your peace.
Yeah, Mayor, not really quick. I was going to bring this up in city manager report, but Heather Gillen did email me and express interest. So I know there's 1, but we did check budgetary wise and we do have room for 2 to go. So if there's anybody else that wants to go.
Have you gone before?
No.
Great. Anybody else that hasn't gone before like to go?
I may be interested. What's the dates again on that?
May 11th through the 13th, I think.
Yeah, put me on it. May 11th through the 13th.
I think you ladies would have fun. And thank you, Heather, for, agreeing to go on that. I'd love to go, but I believe that's Drake Relays weekend.
We've
so.
got time. I know they're sending out first invoices tomorrow for that. That doesn't mean tomorrow's the deadline, but it is first come, first served. So as soon as we find out, the better.
There is usually, in the past, I know
There
John,
there was an orientation.
they have an orientation
Yes.
meeting prior that you'll have to, well, you should attend.
Right.
Because they will talk about items that they'll be talking to the federal government, federal legislators about, and that you'll have a chance to talk with. And, you should try to attend that, but I don't know what that date is on that.
I just needed to check with my work and my family. My son's getting married in the fall, and we got all kinds of wedding stuff. Trying to plan. Right. So, but I would be interested. So if I could just have a day or two to try and figure
If,
that out.
if she's not able to go, Gwen or Ron, would you be willing to want to go or can go or don't want to go? You okay?
I would love to.
As a back, if Christina can't make it. Huh?
Should we text, you think, Christian, and I'll see them.
Okay. Mayor, you got your answer?
Yeah, perfect. Christine, if you just want to let me know and maybe copy Charlie on the email. And then if not, we'll move on. And then Ron's reluctant. Yeah, looks like Ron, you're going to Washington, D.C. with Heather, but you'll have fun.
All right.
Yeah,
So the real question is Carter win?
Yes, they got first in the 4x2, but he got a slight second in that 100. So it's good for him, right? A slight second.
All right. You have anything else, Mayor?
That is it. And I'm going to stay on. So for the discussions moving on, if anyone has questions, why, we kind of put that stuff on there for discussion.
Okay. Okay, let's move. Charlie wants to move, is asked to.
Well, and really quick, and Mayor, if you've got some other stuff and we need to get to these items first, since she brought them up, maybe it is appropriate just to kind of get through them quick and we can
Okay.
hit the streetscape discussion
Okay.
afterwards.
Okay, let's go ahead and do that then. All right, discussion and direction on legal counsel. Charlie, want to?
I'll defer to the mayor on this one. The mayor did ask for this to be put on the agenda, so.
Yeah, and I just thought that this is a good time with the new council that maybe we could look at a couple of these services. I know we discussed that a little bit at our strategy meeting back in January, looking at combining pest services maybe to all one. And so I thought this is a good time to look at our legal services and insurance services as well. From what I understand from another city is ICAP's making some changes. Andy, I don't know if we have seen our annual numbers yet. But again, I don't think that it hurts to, put it out and see if there is anything that can save us a little bit of money here.
When you say insurance services, you're not talking health insurance, you're talking.
No, I'm talking like the workman's comp side of it, our car insurance and stuff like that.
Andy, do you have any comments you want to make?
Actually, Courtney is our risk
Okay.
management person,
Courtney?
So if that's what we're talking about, insurance, I thought we were talking about service.
We're doing insurance.
I'm sorry.
I guess that's where we're headed. So
I'm sorry. Yeah, I apologize. I kind of just jumped straight to that. I felt like that one maybe had a little bit more conversation. So I apologize. That's on me. But again, it's just, do we want to put out an RFP and look at these types of things? I know Warren County made that switch a few years ago, I think 2015, and saved them quite a bit of money. One of the, company in town would be really interested in it, a local company, but it doesn't mean that they're going to be the best price either. So
let's let Courtney. She's at the podium here. Let's let her ever.
Oh, perfect. Thanks.
Yep.
Perfect. I wasn't sure what to bring, so I didn't bring a whole lot. One thing I want to point out is our safety consultant with True North is different than the broker of record that we have with Wyman. So I think that's the biggest statement I want to make. They are two different contracts. The first one is with True North. It was a 3-year that started in 19, and it was just renewed last September to be up for a renewal again. And per their contract, it was with a 3-year extension if parties mutually agreed. So we are ending the 3-year agreement with them, but there is a clause in there that we can extend for 3 years if the parties agree. The broker of record, I'm assuming, I didn't find a whole lot of records. Jackie was helping me with this. With Wyman, it is with the city and IMU, both of these contracts. they handle all of our property and liability. And we have to assume that it began on or about May or July 1 of 19, because it was in the same RFP. So, and I wasn't sure if we were talking just property and casualty and safety, but Holmes Murphy auto renews annually. And they do all of our medical, dental, vision, short, long-term disability, and life and accidental death.
Yeah, no, not on the health side, but more the property casualty.
Right, and we did do an RFP in 2019.
Correct.
2018.
2018 for 19.
So we've done it pretty recent. So.
Yes.
Okay, yeah. Courtney, how long is that contract? Is the RFP good for, like, the safety on the True North side? How, that's 3 years coming up, but how about on the other side with Wyman?
I need to get clarification from them on that. It was part of the RFP, but we couldn't find clear direction in the minutes and whatnot.
Okay.
It was on the same RFP. We have to assume that it's the same terms, but we won't assume. We will get comfortable.
Okay, sure. No, thank you. I appreciate that.
Is it fair to say then that we kind of do things in 3-year time frames? Is that kind of what we've been doing here in the past number of years then, or what?
I've only been here a year and a half, so I can't, with complete confidence, say yes, that is how we do it.
That's how it was done last time.
But that's how it was done last time.
Yeah. What if we have you do a little more research and bring back some things for us, maybe at the next council meeting? Are you okay with that, Mayor?
No, I think that sounds great. Yeah, absolutely. If you can get that information, that'll help, because if we're locked in, then there's no use in obviously doing all this work. So.
And just so I'm clear, the thing that we are looking for is the term of the contract with Wyman.
With Wyman.
Correct. Okay.
Yes.
Anything else, speak up. I just want to make sure that we're clear on what we're going
Yeah.
after.
If we change brokers, we would still be with ICAP?
Correct.
Did you see it?
Correct. Yes. I can't, again, with complete confidence, say that we could even be, transitioning to EMC anymore. I don't know that they would shop a city our size anymore. So there aren't a whole lot of other options.
That's good to know
for that insurance.
Okay, thank you, Courtney. Let's go back to legal services then. Andy, you want to help us out here? Got some information?
I don't have.
And then, yeah, and again, that I don't know what we have for a contract on that one right now. I honest to God, Doug might know that. Yeah. So maybe he can help out a little bit.
We serve at the pleasure of the council. We don't have a contract for any period of time. We basically just, council wants us out, we're out, but we don't have a renewable contract.
Great.
And we certainly can go out to RFP. What I would advise or ask the mayor and council to wait to see how the bids come in for Badai and you. They recently went out for legal services. I would say that they did tell me who they received bids from, and it's the 3 main municipal attorneys in Central Iowa, which is Brick Gentry, Allers, and Dorsey Whitney, are the 3 main municipal. We want to make sure that we have municipal attorneys. They did get one from Dickinson, which I believe is the law firm that helped them with the recent issue. And so I would just suggest that but they did not share with me what they received for quotes. So I would say that the 100, we pay Brick Gentry $150 an hour. I think that's reasonable.
How much?
150
an hour.
50.
Yeah.
And that's
So,
and I look at legal counsel is one of those things that is relationship and history based. And I would not be in favor of just willy-nilly moving things around. I feel like we've been served extremely well over the last 6 years. Seven years. I feel like that things have gone well, and I guess in my opinion would be that would be a serious mistake. So, but again, I'm just one of 6. So
I would agree. I think the fee schedule is reasonable in services.
I just want to make sure no one was going to start talking before I started talking. And again, Doug, I think the services are very reasonable, and you're doing a great job as well too. My question is is our charge door to door. So when you leave, for instance, I apologize. Let's just say you're leaving your office in West Des Moines and come to us. Does it start at that moment, or does it start when our meetings start? And I am just simply saying this just from a very loose conversation I think myself and someone else on the council has had with a attorney that is local, new to a firm, and has an interest in serving the city and has the background. But again, it's not to say that ultimately maybe they decide it's not for them. I just think if there's a way we can find a local provider, again, to save even an hour of travel time each meeting. But again, Doug, you're doing a great job. It's nothing against you.
Yeah, it's door to door, so it's about, today it was 21 minutes from my office, so it's about 40 minutes of travel time.
I would also point out that on their invoices, I just looked at a couple of invoices because I was checking the hourly rate. You guys, when you do work, you do charge it on the 10th of the hour too. That's something you don't find too often. Always do.
One other comment I'd like to make is that we have a whole firm here that we're dealing with when we deal with the firm that we have, and they're geared towards municipal. There's a lot that goes into the services that they provide to us and expertise. I'm not discounting a local person, but if it's just one person, that would have me a little concerned that they'd be able to keep up.
He's in a firm. He's in a firm. There's a firm.
But is,
there.
I would echo that concern.
but is the
just like
firm,
serving on
is the
school board
firm
before,
based
too.
on municipal, I guess?
I think it's not, Mayor, and I appreciate everybody's comments. I think from a perspective of mine is I don't think it's ever bad. I mean, I've had my same car insurance for years, but we always go out for quotes at least every other year. And so I don't think it's bad all the time to have an RFP put out just to make sure that my company stays, in that particular case, in my example, stays competitive. It sounds to me like there's not enough support here, Mayor, to kind of move forward.
Sure, that's fine. Absolutely.
But what I would like to suggest to us is that maybe we let staff take a look at some things that we should be going out to RFP maybe every 3 years or so, and go from there and kind of take a look at that and make some recommendations to us. I guess I'd like some thoughts on that from anybody, if you feel comfortable or don't feel comfortable.
They've done that.
And I don't know if
We've been
that's-
doing that over, I mean, we put out for RFPs on lots of services, correct? I mean, over time, yeah, I mean, I think sometimes there's a thought that just because you've not been here, that they haven't been doing that, that's a process.
No,
I think it will be enlightening to Steve's comment that once we see what the quotes are that IMU received for the attorney firms that they receive RFP, quotes from, that once we see those, that might give us a little more.
And that's a good point.
Yeah.
Well,
Maybe that's
currently
what we need to take a look at. Yeah.
Something else to consider is our staff are all doing multiple
Oh,
people's jobs
absolutely.
right now.
Yeah.
And I don't know that that's really good use of their time at this point right now.
Well,
Maybe in the future it'd be something to consider, but
Andy's point about filling the 10th of the hour, which is what everyone's supposed to do, right?
Not necessarily.
But the
Some
bills
firms
I
do
get
quarter
for my
hour.
personal services are 10-minute phone calls for an hour worth of, billing. So not everybody does what they're supposed to do, so.
Just saying.
But I mean, I support looking local as well, always. That I think that with our vehicles that we purchase, we just purchased.
I think as long as
another-
we get the equal service,
Yeah,
yeah,
well,
I'm
I
okay
agree.
with that, but
Yep.
it's gotta be the
Yeah.
equal service.
But it doesn't have to be right now. And like you said, we have a normal rotation, and right now our staff is busy and.
right.
Also, I would say wait till we get,
Yeah.
see what IMU does, then
Right.
bring it back to the table once.
And we got a city manager on board, and we have some recommendations too. Okay. Anything else, Mayor, you want to talk about, or you okay with where we are?
Sorry, I put you on mute. No, that sounds great. And yes,
Okay.
having a city manager weigh in on all of this will be super important. So
Your last-
absolutely respect that. Thank you.
Your last point on storm shelters.
Yes. So discussion was brought to me by a constituent regarding the need to have FEMA certified storm shelters for slab homes or slab properties, of whether that's multifamily, for anything that's new in development. Now, I'm not an expert on this. I know Charlie is an expert more on this, so I'll let him speak on it, but I was just bringing that forward. I think the situation that had happened in Light and Winterset and, then it hit Norwalk is really close to home. And I think that there are some properties in our town, one very close to me, that would not sustain a tornado and could put us in a, a mass casualties situation. But again, this is a bigger conversation that I'd like Charlie's input on.
Yeah, and I can tell you from my standpoint, I don't know how much more of an expert I am. I've got a building official who works in our office who would speak much more intelligently on this than me, and that's why we have specialized staff in place for those particular situations. What I can tell you, and what I'm sure of, is that such a requirement most likely would lead to some giant upcharges in housing, and that's something that is just, I think we need to be very blunt about. When you see slab on grade houses, typically those are done, and let me just talk about the single family portion of it right now, and we can get into multifamily maybe a little bit too. But on the single family side, when you get a slab on grade house put in, they're typically doing so because, and I'm spitballing here, but you probably save somewhere close to $10,000 to $15,000 by not putting a basement on the house, which then leads to more affordable new housing costs out there. If you requires a FEMA storm shelter, most likely at that point, in a roundabout way, you're essentially forcing them to put basements in there, because basements would most likely be more cost effective for them to do that. And of course, that kind of counts as a shelter in a single family home. On the multifamily and trailer court side of things, having a centralized shelter, I've not looked into that necessarily on what those costs would be, but obviously the larger of a multifamily development you have, the more property capital you have to stretch those costs out to, as far as rent and things like that. But again, this all comes at a cost, and those costs are typically pushed back onto the consumer by any developer. So
this was kind of my area that I dealt with the last 10 years of my career. I don't know if they have to be FEMA 361, but if you build ICC 500 standards, which requires then FEMA 361 approved products in that, you can do that. You also can do a couple of things. You can create a pantry and a kitchen that might have be from foundation up to a roof and have a concrete top. Can be installed in a slab on grade as your storm shelter. There is also the option to put a small area in a garage that you literally drive over every night, but the storm's coming, you pull the car out, you open the lid, and you literally walk down inside a small, very small area, but yet it's a storm shelter that can be provided. Those generally are fairly inexpensive, to be frank about it, and easy to do. I have a cousin who lives in Moore, Oklahoma, which is tornado capital of the world. He's had a tornado within a quarter mile north and south of him. He put in a system that he had to dig it down 3 feet into his yard. And literally it's a kind of a dome shaped thing that is FEMA 361 approved, and it serves as a storm shelter, costing less than $2,000 to do it. It was a pre-made thing. You just drop in the hole and it's there. So I think there's some options there, but I think I do agree with the mayor's position and point that if you look at the fatalities that occurred in the last tornado in Winterset and in southern Iowa, the fatalities were in facilities, rather than buildings that were slab on grade. And so I really think that we need to consider that option. And there are things that we could have, that could be put into a building that allow them to have various options. But I think there's some things there that we really need to consider. My perspective.
Are you thinking just on new construction going forward?
Yep, you can't go back. You shouldn't make it existing now. John?
My concern is, one of the things I know that we worry about, and Councilwoman Beach talks about low-income housing, and we struggle with that anyway, and then start adding more constraints like that. I'm just really concerned. I don't discount the fact that you worry about those people, but you also, I've got daughter lives in an apartment in Grimes, which, makes me nervous. I never thought about it when I was 21 living in Fairview Apartments. It didn't even cross my mind, so, but, it's one of those things that, I don't know. I struggle with that. I don't know that I'm ready to jump into that.
Well, I will tell you, the tornado went through the west side of town. I was living in a condo on the west side of town, and we were in the lower level, which is not a basement. We were in the lower level in the laundry room, hoping that would be a good enough shelter. I mean, it's literally, we're about me and 10 of my good friend neighbors. So, Chief?
Yeah, I just want to clarify something. There is no FEMA credited, or FEMA does not sanction. FEMA makes recommendations. Who's going to credit it is the builder, whoever designs it. It'd be like if we went to Dave and said, Dave would make the certification, not FEMA. And the ICC 500 is part of the 361, the P360.
You have to meet the testing requirements.
Right.
FEMA P361, which is 250 mile an hour wind load and largeness.
Those are recommendations. It's not FEMA that is.
Right. If you're building a building to FEMA standards and you get funding from FEMA and they require you to have storm shelter, then you have to build to FEMA requirements.
Right, to 361, not ICC 500.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's a builder's preference.
It's whoever the designer is.
Okay.
If they're following 361 to the T, or if they're following ICC 500.
Gotcha.
Right. And ICC 500 is really about what they call resilient construction, which means that you beef everything up a little bit. You maybe heard the architect the other night talk about hardening a facility, and some of that is kind of along the line of ICC 500. But what you do is you put, in most of those cases in an ICC 500 design building, you do put FEMA 361 tested products in some of those, like your windows and doors and block and things like that.
Correct.
And
So
that's exactly
usually-
what it is. And roof
So
structure.
I understand. What you're saying basically is if somebody were getting some kind of special funding to purchase the house, that would affect it?
There's grant money out there.
Okay.
For instance,
Through
Joplin,
FEMA.
when the tornado went through Joplin, Missouri about 10 years ago,
Mhm.
Joplin, Missouri applied, the high school, the community school district applied because that high school was completely wiped out. And so what they applied for was a FEMA grant to build a new high school. And so that FEMA grant was approved and they had to design and build the entire building to FEMA 361 standards, which was pretty expensive, but very expensive, but that's what they got the money to do it. That's how they built it.
Okay, I get you.
Yeah. Okay, I don't think we have a direction on this yet, Mayor. So,
I definitely think it's something that we need to keep, in the forefront, because I mean, look at what did happen in Winterset and Norwalk. 2 miles, one different direction, and it could have been us.
yeah.
I'd make the
So-
case that that's a good reason not to allow slab homes. I'm not a fan of slab homes, so I would make the case that we should require basements in all our homes, which then, as you said, John, hikes the cost.
Yeah.
But if we're really truly concerned about safety, obviously, slab homes would certainly put a person at risk. But it's a personal choice too. If someone, buys a slab home, I own one as
They
a
can own
rental,
that
it's their choice,
risk.
On that.
I believe, I wish I had thought to look it up before I came. I had read an article before speaking about housing developments that did the slab homes, but they had like a community shelter within.
Some will do that, yeah, but
Yeah.
it's not a requirement.
Can we require that as a city for like a slab home development area?
Yes, but it would be and I'm trying to think, let's just look at like Wade Journey, for example. They went out in the Prairie Glen subdivision. So Prairie Glen was developed by a developer. That developer ended up selling off individual lots to Wade Journey, who then built those houses. So for us, it wasn't really easy to say, okay, this developer is going to put slab and grade houses. What happened was the developer sold those lots off to them. So it's kind of hard to track from that standpoint. But if we did have a development come in that was proposing slab and grades home, could we talk to them about that? Yes. And I mean, if there was a requirement, could we make them do that? Yes. Does it answer your question?
Yeah,
it's-
definitely. I mean,
There's just
to
a
me,
lot
I
of
mean,
things
that's
that,
something, if we're gonna allow slab built homes,
Yeah.
and division,
Yep.
like that, we need to address that.
One thing that I can also recommend, so the city of Indianola is represented on the Central Iowa Code Consortium. This is a group of towns from Central Iowa who every time IBC makes amendments to their codes, they do versions every 3 years. This group reviews all of that and comes up with a joint recommendation for all cities to adopt. Tim Little, as our building official, does serve on this next round on the Code Consortium, so I can ask him to have this discussion with that consortium and see if there's some agreement, maybe metro-wide for it. The other thing I would always throw caution to the wind is that Indianola is the only town not doing something, every other town's not doing it. That obviously puts us at a disadvantage. So
I think we do have one. Do we have one in the metro area currently doing that? That's currently required.
I don't know. I really don't know the answer to that. That's the research that we'd have to do.
Do they all allow platforms?
As far as I know, yes. But again, I don't quote me on that because I'm not 100% sure on that.
I would maybe go with that to see what you can find out.
Okay.
Just
Yep.
so that way, because, you know, we are looking to expand, not shrink our
Right.
base.
Yep.
So
Yep.
it would be nice to know what that kind of general.
Yes, I will send him an email yet tonight about that and just make sure that he does have that discussion.
Okay, let's move on
Thank
to
you.
Charlie. Want to talk about the possible fill strip on the side?
Yeah, I'm gonna hand it off if Fulton and Mink's ready. They've got a presentation to kind of give and go over some of this stuff, and I will be on board. I don't know if you want this clicker at all. Thank you. But Chad Kalsdorf, I know he's given one presentation to the council. I'll start off with him, and I think both AP and I might jump in a little bit here along the way just to clarify some stuff as we go.
Council, it's good to be in front of you again to discuss this a little bit more. As we go through this, just kind of want to, the intent of this is to kind of talk you through the design process that we went through. Unfortunately, engineering is not like the fire department. We don't get the little junior fire department hats or the stickers you get to wear, because we'd have to do pocket protectors and no one uses those anymore. So sorry, we don't have those. So as we go through this, I kind of wanted to walk you through. Again, this might be filled with some acronyms you might not know. So if there's anything I say that might be unfamiliar, you're not aware of, let me know. And we can kind of discuss those. So jumping into this, really kind of what we want to do is kind of review the design criteria that we needed to meet for this project. We want to talk about what was built as it is built now, and then your options for retrofit. I know there's been some discussion here. We kind of went through the options. The nice thing is we already went through this design process. All the options for retrofit were covered early on as a part of our design process. So we want to kind of hit all these highlights for you. So the number one criteria we have to meet for sidewalks is the Americans with Disability Act, ADA. This was passed in 1991 and fully implemented. Some people think this is something new, and they are incorrect. This has been the law of the land since 1991. People have tried to ignore it as best they can since then. And it's gotten to the point, they've passed some additional supplemental things. ADAG, which is the American Disabilities Act Accessibility Guidelines. These were the guidelines that went in. This has kind of transformed over the years to be more buildings requirements and some of the general overarching purposes there. And then recently 2005, PROWAG, which is the Public Rights of Way guidelines, have been, this is not a law, this is not enacted as part of law, but this is the guidelines given by the federal government that we need to meet, that tells you how they are interpreting ADAG for the public right of way. So these things are controlled by the federal government and enforced by the Department of Justice. So this is not an engineering, this is not a construction thing. There is, as we say when dealing with the Department of Justice, there is only one way, and that is their interpretation of these things. So there is no wiggle room allowed of this. As part of the process of this, implementation across the country has been pretty poor in a lot of areas. And they have gotten quite Byzantine with the penalties for people who have not implemented this. The city of Des Moines, I don't know if you have read a couple of years ago, had lawsuits where they were fined up to $5 million for lack of compliance. That's probably the big one. At that same time, they went around to the rest of the metro communities and said, you guys are next, get your ADA transition plans going and stop not doing these projects as they are written. And these projects, you are required, here's some very specific guidelines, when you have to do these outside of maintenance activities, you need to incorporate them in all new construction. There is zero tolerance for new construction. And as you go through and do retrofits, you must implement them without, as long as it does not significantly increase the project area or funding or expenditures, okay? So there are some limits on there, but if you're close, basically, if you're anywhere near a pedestrian ramp or any type of project, that needs to be replaced to meet current accessibility standards, okay? The next, so kind of going through these are the kind of the minimum requirements that we have to meet, that are standards. You must have a walkable path that is 4 foot wide, that is unimpeded. That means nothing can be inside that 4 foot clear area, okay? There are specific requirements for slopes. So your cross slope is what we call that, basically that goes underneath your feet, is perpendicular to your line of travel. So if you're walking forward towards me, the cross slope is pointing to one of your shoulders, okay? So those cross slopes are generally supposed to be between 0.5% to 2% across that space, that walkable clear space. Your running slope, there's more variation in that. It's usually about 0.5% to about 12.5%, depending on kind of landing spaces. So a landing space or a turning space is an area that is completely compliant, that a person in a wheelchair or physically disabled can turn around with minimal effort. So it's flat enough where they can stop, turn to a different direction, and proceed in another direction. Okay. So based on this, this table here is directly out of the SUDAS code. So if you are less than 5%, you have any length of what your preference is. You don't have to have turning spaces at any set distance, and you can go as far as you need to, right? Between 5 and 8.3%, you want to be at 50 feet, but you can go up to 200 feet between turning spaces. So if you have a street that is somewhere where where it's slightly steeper, where someone would have to walk, they want you to be at 50 feet, but they allow up to 200 feet where you can do some of these crosses. You can use driveways as part of these turning spaces and landing areas as long as they are compliant. Okay. Between 8.3 to 10, that knocks down to 30%, 30 feet. That's your minimum. So every 30 feet, if your slope is between 8.3 and 10%, you're going to be at 30 feet, a turning space where, again, can stop, land, turn around, and continue on. And then 10 to 12% is 10 feet. And generally this, once you get over greater than 12.5%, it's every 10 feet you would have to have a turning space where someone could stop, rest, and then continue on. Okay. The important thing also to realize is, so when you're looking at this, and again, this is kind of the area we're looking at here, between B and the alleyway on Salem, is our designated walkable path is from at B, you have the pedestrian ramp that is fully compliant, that goes across this 5 foot area, that is the sidewalk that is completely clear. And then you can use the driveway as a substitute path, but since our slopes are under 1%, we can go 200 feet. So the other part of this, the other landing space is over at the corner of Salem and Buxton. Okay. The non-walkable path will be what you would consider going, and this would be for every city street in America because of a curb, unless there's no curb. The 6 inches of a curb eliminates that from being allowed to be in a walkable path. Someone in a wheelchair or something like that would not be able to go over that. So we are not mandated to meet a walkable path with compliant slopes for that direction of travel. So if you drive your car and you go step up over the curb and walk into a business, you have taken the non-walkable path, and that is your decision. That's why people also, when we put landscape items in an area, that is the non-walkable path. If someone decides to walk through them and they feel they're physically able, that is their decision. We try and keep them out of them there, those areas with those other things, but that's kind of how we justify this. So parking on the curb, stepping up on the curb and walking into anywhere would be considered going through a non-walkable path. Okay. Again, this kind of, just to reiterate it, these are the things to make it a little bit bigger. Those are your slopes. Again, those exceptions, the 8.3 is where we're really trying to stick our running slopes on a sidewalk or a trail to kind of make it able to be very functional. So we can go 200 feet without having to put turning spaces in it. So, okay. So with that basis, this kind of brings into our stormwater. Our stormwater challenges on the square is all the way across it. One side of the square is high, the other side is low. Water goes from high to low. It is, I do not believe it's specifically written in Iowa code that is illegal for you to run stormwater from your property through a public right of way to another person's property. It is generally accepted that you are fully liable for that if that happens, but it's not necessarily against code. It's not written in code. Other parts of the country, that is 100% illegal. And I would assume, and all the case law that I have seen or I've ever worked with, is that you do not have the right to flood your neighbor's property for any reason. This is again why all the detention requirements for any stormwater site has withheld every kind of court challenge that has come through. It is not considered unfair or unjust for you to detain stormwater from your site from any kind of development. Okay. So with our stormwater, again, trying to prevent the water from the high side going to the low side and affecting those, negatively impacting those businesses, we didn't have a lot of great options. Again, we're again focusing here on that block of Salem, Exit Realty on one side, West Hill Brewing on the other side. We have about a foot of distance. This dash line that you can see was the existing grade, and on a major storm event, you can see where this causes problem where flooding can go into or negatively impact the property at West Hill. So what did we do? Again, we didn't have there's not a lot of great options when you are doing a reconstruction. What we decided to do, which is a very standard practice, is that we were going to make one side of the street steeper to be able to get us above the existing grade line here, flatten this side of the road out, which it is, it's about 1% on this side, about 3% on this side, to trap the water, put a curb, and then we had to make a decision on the high side. What do we do? We could have run a standard road section, as you are probably familiar with, is to go from the backup curb line and run straight at 2% back. In our situation, that would have left us about 7 inches below the existing stoops of the businesses on the north side of Salem. So what do we do? We'll walk you through the process here. We chose a very standard practice in all over the country, is that we would bring the sidewalk up to meet those stoops. So that way there wouldn't be any other construction required by the business owners or the city to be able to get into those businesses. And that left us about 7 inches. We decided to put that 7 inches in that non-walkable area, that we would adjust the slope of the sidewalk and or match the side of the sidewalk into the city or into the back of curb in that area. It's 2 foot wide. It's not walkable. It's not wide enough to be walkable. It's normally what you would use for a landscape area. But again, being 2 foot, it's too really narrow to put any meaningful plant inside of that. You're looking at doing some grass or some other things. With our permeable paver installation, that is problematic. Those pavers need to stay clean. If clippings of yard debris get in there, it plugs, causes maintenance issues, which we will consider later. So this was our first approach. And what we decided was best let me show you some pictures.
Well, and really quick, Chad, if you don't mind, can I just summarize what we're at right here too? And you mentioned one thing, I just want to clarify it, but when we were looking at this project, here's all the design elements that needed to go into any planning that we were doing. We at that point, I should say Chad at that point and his team noticed, hey, we're going to have some changes on this stuff. We went through an array of options at the staff level to kind of see what made sense and what didn't make sense. So I think Chad's going to go over those right here, but I want to be hopeful and just make sure that council gets a good understanding of these are essentially the regulations that we are held under when we're designing this entire project. ADA drives a lot of things through this. So the cross slopes on the sidewalks, a lot of them right now, and I'm just going to show you my hand. Some of them, the original ones were like this. ADA says it has to do this. So, you're changing elevations in a lot of areas to meet all of these standards. Same with the stormwater. Now, maybe you might be doing a little bit of different pitch on the road. And again, you're changing all of these elevations throughout the square to meet these stormwater and these ADA requirements. And then it came down to what do we do in those areas in between? And Chad's going to go on here, but just so council's aware, Chad mentioned these are what we decided to know. This is something that staff did direct him to do. So this was a city decision from our staff standpoint. And then obviously the council approved the plans and specifications on there, but I just want to be very clear going forward that that's kind of where we're at on here. So
I would, that's definitely what I mean. The project team, city staff, as we brought this.
I just want to make sure it wasn't a both thing.
What I will say is this, Charlie and I walked Howard and Ashland 3 weeks ago. And one of the things on the site that's not been, could be currently being torn up and stuff. Charlie made a comment that just sparked a memory in my head. There were a lot of businesses on that Salem portion between Buxton and B Street that had steps. I remember Fred Fletcher used to have a surplus store on the south side, and you had to walk up 2 steps to get into his store. As we were walking down Howard, I remember there were steps that you had to go into some of the businesses to get into those businesses, even though now it's been brought down to grade. And so we do have an issue, and I understand that now. The only thing what I will say is, having said that, I still think there's a better option than having a slant like that. I just had somebody tell me that is it Fusion Fitness now where Old Gamble's building is? Is that what that is? Yeah, Hallmark. That was the Old Gamble store. Yeah, okay. So two young, fairly able people slipped on that the other morning going into there. So we still have issues. We're going to take care of those, I hope. But the issue is, where do we go from here? So what's the recommendation?
Hey, Steve, do you mind, Chad? I'm sorry. I'll just tell you real quick, the concern I got, and it was from 2 people who are handicapped. They are in wheelchairs, and one of them frequents Salem Connection quite a bit. And she is able to drive herself, but her exit is on her passenger side of her van. So she cannot get out of her van on those slopes because of how her ramp goes. And the other person as well, the same. That is the concern with that parallel parking in there. And then in order to get up onto that walkable area, they have to ride, in their wheelchairs to the end of the block or to the middle of the block. Cause it's appropriate the way they're laid out, the entrance ramps, but that means they have to park either somewhere else and then go down to one of those ramps, but they're not able to access the sidewalk. So I think that's where, the concern came. And I went down and one of them did a preview of it for me so I could see it, how she does not have access to many businesses that are completed unless she parks on the interior part. And that's hoping that she gets a handicap spot with a ramp accessibility. And then even when she does park in there, she's riding her wheelchair in the street to get up to the sidewalk. And so that's the only thing I had to say about that part. But I really do think it is limiting some people, and those are 2 great examples right there that they can't get out of their own vans.
Yeah, but she wouldn't have been able to do that before either. That's always been parallel parking right there.
It wasn't sloped like that. I guess that slope is new, so that's where the problem comes in. But again, I appreciate all the work that was done, and I know you guys walked through some new ideas. So I'm going to stop talking and put it back on mute. But I just wanted to make sure I said that part, that
it's sad to see that this woman can't get out of her van if she parks there, and she can't get out of her van down by Affinity Bridal or Pamela's Place or Fusion as well too. And they're also frequent at Krause's, so it's a concern they have continued if we do these slopes.
Okay, Chad, you're up.
Okay, so here's some precedence images. So on the left here is outside of Exit Realty. This is the slope and the fillet strip here. As you can see, this is Clear Lake, Iowa. This was sent in by somebody. The fillet strips are similar. We don't have a measurement on those, but you can see this is not an extreme case of what we've done. It is not uncommon. We also have another picture here of Lee Summit, where you can see in the shadow here, there's the paver edge here with the plantings. This is pretty similar to what we have going on. Again, 2 foot, you match it as quickly as you can. The walkable area is the great sidewalk. We have kind of met the intent of kind of a very typical design for handling these kind of situations.
What's the percentage of those?
I don't know what the percentage is on those, but it's more.
Looking at it, it just looked like less of a slope than what ours was.
I would say Clear Lake.
That one
is
looks
much
pretty
less.
steep,
I mean, I've been at Clear Lake,
Yeah.
many, many times. That's not even noticeable up there. Now, the Lee Summit looks more noticeable.
Yeah, I'd say that looked pretty steep there,
But Clear Lake is not even noticeable.
because I can see it by the pole right by the shadow.
And again, this is projected. We can provide you these pictures for a little more up close investigation if you like, but these are relatively straight. These would where I would estimate in that probably 15-ish% plus or minus a couple percent, one way or the other. The transition on here too. So as we went through the design process as our team, these are the options that we've developed, and I guess we're bringing forth also possibly as possible retrofits. So, and again, this is focusing on that block of Salem because this is the most extreme case inside the square. So on the left, you have the face of building. Assume that's Exit Realty. What we would do is remove the sidewalk, remove the fillet strip, come into the backup curb, pour this back at a 2% slope. You would get about 6 feet of accessible route, so you widen it by a foot. But we would also have to put a step here on the pavement at 1.5 feet, right on top of the pavement of the sidewalk to be able to get into the building. There are anything wider than that. You would reduce if you tried to put a pedestrian ramp going to those buildings. They would have to be 4 feet. You would not have a clear accessible space available to you, and you would be outside the requirements.
Would we gain any additional width to the sidewalks doing something like that?
You would with just the step, but you could not do like a pedestrian ramp like you see in front of Krause's or around the square. You wouldn't have enough space for the clear space through here.
So then they're not ADA compliant.
So they would not be ADA compliant. So with this, again, we would remove the existing sidewalk and the fillet strip, put a new sidewalk, slope that away, and we'd have to put a step. This would take about 6 weeks, and our estimated cost, again, these are based on what we've gotten back from our contractors, some design costs to come back and to retrofit this, would be about $96,000. That at this point is an estimate. If you were to choose to go through this, we would have to go through and run some hard numbers on there. And there's plenty of escalation. Again, it would negatively impact the completion date of the project currently to go back and retrofit this.
And just to be clear, when we talk these dollars amount, this is in that block from B to the mid block of Salem, essentially in front of Exit Realty, Bob's Custom Trophy, and those places. So that cost estimation is just in that section right there.
There'd be no additional repair or retrofit. The other issues we would have to challenge here on all those buildings, their footings are in the right of way. So we would have to notch out around. So we would be reducing some of the sidewalk in and around those. We'd also be exposing building basement walls that would have to be treated with a grout or epoxy waterproofing of some sort. We would also have to figure out how to get around the footings, which would be in the walkable way. So that would be one of the things we wouldn't really know until we got down and excavated down that 7 inches to know what we're really into. This also includes rerouting some storm drains and then grading back in and around the buildings, which then would expose some more basement walls that we would have to contend with and trees. So this is kind of your base option here. These prices, again, with the current climate of prices or snapshot, these are not, I wouldn't guarantee this, I would expect these prices to go up. So that's one of the options we talked about. Again, we talked about this at the design phase, what's best for the businesses. And we felt that having a step in front of the business was negative. I was trying to find my notes from the public outreach meetings. I believe we brought this up. I don't have note of it, but this was for the stakeholder groups that met with us, that this was not an attractive option. This is something they did not want.
And that's not what I was suggesting either, because I just said, all I was suggesting as our walk, Charlie, was that there were steps there at one time, and so the street was changed, the elevations were changed to accommodate those steps there.
Sure.
I think we just wanted to kind of go through the options that we did discuss as a group, just so, and we think they're the logical options, but yeah, this one we moved away from pretty fast. We had some steps, so.
The other problem as a maintenance issue, who maintains the step? Most cities that would put that down to the building owner to maintain. That's part of their property. There would be a discussion about that, who would kind of take care of that, and who would bear the burden of that cost going forward if it were to crack, break, or move, and those issues. So it's not a very clean cut. I think I speak for AP, where he was not in favor of these steps, and we're removing these, as many of these as we can. So that's an option. Again, businesses would be out of compliance with ADA, ADAG, that would open them up to possible legal action, the maintenance of the steps, the building footings in the right of way, along with the other retrofit option issues. The second option that we talked about doing, again, this 2-foot strip is pretty much, it's tough to say space is useless, but in this kind of situation, it relatively is. But if we were to come back and do this retrofit, we would keep the 5-foot accessible route. We would have to come in and remove the sidewalk, put in a thickened edge to be able to cap the surface here to make sure that we wouldn't have any intrusion or anything sliding out from underneath, undermining that sidewalk. We would also have to tie in some border walls to make it more of a planter bed. To grow in here, it's very minimal, maybe some bushes or shrubs. Most likely would be grass. Key thing here, this would be put on the business owners to maintain. And then we would also have issues with what they put in there. If they did not maintain that and dirt got onto the pavers, that would become a significant issue. Grass clipping is, again, it's more of a maintenance hassle. It's not easy to mow at that kind of grade. It's kind of it's not a great solution. So again, part of this too, we also included a landscape fence and some railings. The price of this in steel is outrageous currently. So this really was a big cost driver as well. Other concerns with putting this in, it's visually, it's a distraction for the driver. And if landscape fences are next to pedestrian walkways are just targets for abuse and tripping and all sorts of stunts. I don't know what your skateboard community is like here in town, but they are great stunt tools for their TikTok videos as well. We do not ever encourage them here. They're nice if they're up out of the way, but they're a pain to kind of maintain and keep.
And I can even really quick just point out too, and AP mentioned this when we were kind of going through some of this, but since the first phase of the square has been open, we had originally some handicap signs right at the back of curb. And we have now had to replace those 3 times, and we finally just moved them to the back sidewalk, just so we didn't have to keep replacing them because they were getting hit by vehicles, people walking, whatever it may be, but they were getting knocked down. And again, with the 3-month period, we had to do it 3 different times. So.
And it was not just vehicles, it was also snow removal equipment from the sidewalk. They were constantly hitting them. So it had constantly, we had to repair it. And last we decided to keep it away from the sidewalk. So we went on the grass strip behind the sidewalk.
So again, estimated cost for this solution, $157,000. And again, this would be about a 6-week duration to come in, remove it and replace it again. The issues here, and I want to show you this picture here. This is in Davenport, and a picture that we've done this before. And this is actually a relatively good solution. But the difference is there is 10 foot of walk and then 6 foot of space in here where you can do that. So there's sizable room where you can see the footings of the street light. This is 4 foot wide, deep soils. You can plant a lot of things, and then you have another buffer between the back of curb so people can walk around and not step off into the landscape bed. Ours is different, but it would look like this, but much shorter. And we really don't have much room to support any kind of decent planning, something that you'd want to see. Again, the paver impact that we're going on, the railing and the landscape fencing. Again, it's more of a fall trip hazard. Someone comes careening around and goes over it, and depending on their state of alcohol consumption, again, if someone's, it's just not a great solution. One of the big questions too is who performs maintenance on it. You're going to have to review the railings and the landscape fence at least annually to know if there's any corrosion or needs to be repainted. It would have to be probably repainted every year or every other year at a minimum to keep it standing and resistance to anything. Again, then there's anchor bolts that you would have to review and inspect to make sure that it's staying stout. And then who would perform the maintenance, and then who would do the inspections and paintings on those things. That would be a concern that would have to be resolved as well. So, okay, so option 3 would be to remove the curb, put in a taller curb, which would be about 13 inches tall, so a foot to step over, and then again, build this back at a 2% maximum slope. So there'd be about 7.5 feet of access in this one area where you would have space. So 7.5 foot walkable route. Again, you'd have to remove the sidewalk, filler strip, pavers. You would have to come in and remove these pavers. The curb in this area is acting as the border and the boundary. So once you would move that, the pavers would all come loose, and you would have to reset the entire paver bed to be able to get it right. You would have to be very, very careful at resetting that we did not mess up the aggregate as part of this and mess up the possible of SRF reimbursement. This is a very complex thing. Again, this is a huge chunk of concrete, a lot of steel reinforcement to make this work. Again, we're talking about $95,000 and about 5 weeks to be able to do. Again, pending on schedules, our subcontractors did not get back to us if they would be able to kind of meet that deadline too. So I would expect that timeline to go up with our paver contractor, just with the workload he has and when you would want to pull the trigger on it. This is a great picture from Google Earth from Burlington downtown. This is about a foot tall curb. You can see the impact that it has on your car. You can see the teeth marks of snow plows and or doors and bumpers. If someone were trying to walk, they'd have to step up. They would have to be mobile enough to be able to go up a 12-inch step. It's not ideal for the situation that you have in your downtown. It would be, you would have step-off hazards, vehicular damage you'd have to worry about, and then the maintenance issues on these as well. Bigger if there's a chunk of concrete that comes out of it. It's not a 6-inch curb. You're talking about replacing 12 inches of curb, and it's a bigger section with more steel in it. It would be very challenging. And then finally, the fourth option that we discussed as part of the design process, and I think as we talked about, is to come in and remove the fillet strip here, and then pour back this and put it in a step. So where it would match the back of curb, come across, and then you'd have a step off. Again, this is not a great solution because it's so narrow. If you were able to put like a secondary pathway where someone could walk along comfortably, 4 foot wide is probably where you would want to be. You could have kind of a two-stair thing, which would be nice and fit, but with kind of the narrow area again, it's really challenging to kind of see that really a favorable solution.
What's the dimension on that? The width dimension?
2 feet.
Okay. What's the dimension from your
5.5 feet.
5.5 feet is this one.
Sidewalk.
Oh, no, I get that. Okay. But what's your dimension? So from here to here, you know what that dimension is? And then we still keep a 4-foot sidewalk here?
So that's the whole thing would be 5.5 feet. We would incorporate that thickened edge into that sidewalk slab. So that would be 18 to 24 inches as a thickened edge there. And normally that would just be shaped out and filled with form.
With our current situation on Salem right now, how wide is the sidewalk? With the current situation?
5 feet.
Okay, so we're still at 5 feet then?
Yes.
So you got 2 foot strip there. Okay.
I mean, essentially with this option, you're taking that fill strip and flattening it out.
We're just flattening it out
Two-step.
and bridging that. So it's going to be a flat step and then come up.
Right.
We did include prices in here for railings because you really need railings over 30 inches, but 30 inches are 2 steps. The question is how safe you'd want to be. If you put in railings halfway about it, you're encouraging people to walk up and down that, but then you don't technically have to do that, but we would have to justify that. It's again 2 steps or 30 inches is where you would need railings and a handrail to go up those things. Estimated cost here is $83,000, and again, it would be a 4-week schedule to get it removed, re-pour it, and retrofit that area. Again, these areas, this is again out of Burlington, from there downtown, as you can see, kind of some of the seams down here. Again, you have snowplows riding on it, people hitting it, parking up on it. It's not, again, it'll take a lot of damage. And so it will cause, if it comes time for repair, it'll be a significant maintenance cost to repair.
Go back to your previous slide. So what's the curb there then on the right there? What's that curb height?
6 inches.
Which is normal standard curb, right?
Right.
So we currently have snow plows and everything else that deal with 6-inch curbs, is that correct? Is that
That's
right,
correct.
AP?
Yep.
Got it. Good.
So again, minimal usable space, vehicular damage. There's a chance someone gets out there, they feel like they can throw their door wide. They're going to ding their door again. Luckily, it's parallel parking and not someone hitting their their car up and over the lip. The responsibility would be for business owners to maintain. So if there's a broken chunk of concrete in there, they would be responsible to replace that. And the amount of steel that will be put in there would be very cost prohibitive. The maintenance issues, again, discussing when those things do happen, what we would allow for maintenance, whether we would allow grout sealing for cracking and those kind of things to make sure that it stays secure and tight.
So you're saying that the business owners would be responsible for repairing the curb?
Behind the curb they're not responsible for, but for city
Second,
codes.
that second curb they'd be
So from their face of
responsible
building to the back of the curb is the
So why
sidewalk.
the difference then? I guess that's what I don't understand, because right now, I mean, it's a 7-inch slope or 7% slope, whatever you said it was.
Sticking on my shoe.
They're not responsible for maintaining that, correct?
Yeah, no, they are.
They are.
They are.
Yes.
At least it's not. The other question to just kind of talk about the door thing though, right now in front of Exit Realty, if I'm parallel parking there and I've got somebody getting out of the car, they're still going to hit that slope. Is that right?
Depending on where, I mean, this is one of the challenges you have is designing parking. If they park with their tires rubbing the curb, they probably will hit the door swing. If they park within the 18 inches, more than likely they will not. And again, it depends on the height of the car, and there's a lot of other factors as part of that. So to kind of bring this all back together, to reality. So again, in front of Exit Realty, the walkable path is that 5-foot wide. The non-walkable path is that filler strip. So what you have now is a 5-foot wide walkable path with a cross slope that rides probably between 1% to 1.5%. So fully compliant. The non-walkable path is 2 foot wide, and depending on where you're at the worst parts, it goes between 15 to 30% across that. So 7 inches across 2 feet approximately. And this is the visual on it. As you can see very well on the curb, the tire marks and tracks of people getting on top of it. We do not see many gouges in the concrete. So assumption is there's not a lot of thwartings going on at this point that we can see. Again, that would be a visual. You want to go through and mark that out with pencil would really pop, but from our walkthroughs, it doesn't really look like there's a whole lot of damage to the sidewalk face that you would associate with someone swinging a door into some concrete. But again, you do have a lot of tire wear kind of going up and top over these things. So to talk about, so on the next block of Salem, they kind of show the difference between what we're dealing with between B and Buxton. So this is between Buxton and Howard, right in front of, I'm gonna forget the coffee shop name here.
Common Grounds.
On Common Grounds, that's right, sorry. Not a coffee guy, just not. So what we have, the differences between those two areas is that we have our walkable path here, runs right in front here. This is 8 foot to 8.5 foot wide. The buildings kind of move around a little bit, so that kind of gets it a little tighter. We do also have the pedestrian or the ramp into Uncommon Grounds there as well that we're able to go around. So that's your walkable path with your accessibility ramps on either side of that. The non-walkable portion, and again, while we put all the landscaping, the lights, these inlay brick pavers in the non-walkable path, because those don't have to meet ADA requirements for walking through there. Again, if you look at it, you feel you're capable, you can walk up that, please we allow you. But if there's any opportunity or you not feel you can do it, again, curb is there, but the designated accessible route is to go to either one of the street corners and walk through. Sorry, real quick on the summary. So your walkable path is 8 to 8.5 foot wide at about 1 to 1.5%. And then your non-walkable path, and again, this was part of our stakeholder outreach with the business owners there, to have more space in front for possible putting out of product or benches and the like for their own thing, was to make this wider. So this is 6 feet, and it varies between 8 to 15% depending on where you're at on that slope. And the view here, you can see the edge here, walkable path, not walkable path. And that would be the difference between those.
We just had a discussion with business owner about the patio to be put in, and part of the issue was really couldn't find tables. We wouldn't be able to put tables in the non-walkable path because of the slope. And so you really can't put tables out there if you're gonna put merchandise or anything, and you can't obstruct the sidewalk, obviously.
There's room to obstruct it. Yeah, there's still room to obstruct the sidewalk because we have, depending on where you're at in the square, again, you'll need that 4 foot of walkable area. That's where city code says too. And any sidewalk use agreement that we get into them is always that, got to keep that 4 foot of open space throughout there. So on these ones, and what did you say? It was usually 8 feet, I think is what we had. So really about half the sidewalk. You still have to go.
From where to where?
Yeah.
From the building to this, basically this choke line.
Okay.
It's about 8 foot.
So there is still area.
There's some space.
Yeah. But that area closer to the curb, obviously, we run into issues there. And again, I just want to go back to the beginning and stress, stormwater and ADA requirements really drive a lot of these elevations that we're dealing with. And I mean, I would be pretty frank in saying there's really not many options we can do differently in these areas. I think the options that Chad presented are really about all we can do, but we can't take away the difference from the curb line and the sidewalk line unless we start putting front steps into all these buildings. That's really about the only way we can do that.
So on the new section between Salem and Ashland on Howard, and between Howard and Buxton on Ashland, what are our percentages there that we're going to have to look at slope? I think Charlie at one point said there was some over 8%. Am I wrong?
8 to 10% is about where it is. We're looking at some of those, looking where we can design it. The part of those areas are really near driveways where people are coming up, and that's always a challenge from as you're trying to warp those into those buildings.
The alley driveways we're talking,
around the alleyways. So we're looking at what we can do to kind of mitigate those. One of the challenges that we have with that is how flat is acceptably flat. We fall back to the ADA requirements for a short distance. Going up to about 12% is kind of what we'll limit that at. I mean, again, so if you're coming from the sidewalk, that's compliant. The landing space for the walkable space is compliant. And we're talking 2 to 6 feet of clearance. So we would fall within that 10-foot where you have turning spaces, even though the curb would discount that as an accessible path. So you could use that. That's kind of the part of the justification. If we need to meet something much stricter, if you wanted to get that down to 1%, that really changes the scope of the project and will increase the cost of construction, because we'll have to dig down around buildings foundations. We'll get into some of those things, and then we have to figure out how we get back up to get into building walkways. So that's kind of one of the challenges that we're kind of juggling between here. We're reevaluating. AP has also asked us to put in another ADA designated spot with a ramp around it, like we've done at the northwest corner of Ashland and Buxton. But that would be on Ashland and Howard, the kind of on Ashland, right, the first spot as you go right off of Howard. So we're evaluating that grade to make that flatter, so there'll be another accessible park with a ramp we can come up on. The other options, we can look to minimize those slopes as well. We're looking at some of the grades, if we can really flatten some things out or change some of the grades to bring it up out of the ground to reduce those. But there's nothing where we can get it down to where we would say a 2 to 5% grade, where it would feel like nothing.
And even on that last point that Chad made, I think in phase one, we did that as well going through phase one, because I don't know what the plan said it is, but when you get into the actual construction, we were kind of adjusting things as much as we could to flatten it out as much as we could. But what we have out there is really what we could do.
The other challenge we find is when we pull the sidewalk off, is there are a lot of footings underneath the sidewalks in the right of way. And so we have to work around that. The goal of the project is not to impact the building in any way, any building in any way. So it's usually put it back over the top of the footing so we don't negatively impact those things, or can be accused of impacting those things. So that's kind of been the goal of this part. Again, basements and footings are not cheap solutions. We can do some things depending on what they look like. But again, that's a delay, and it drives up cost of the overall project if there needs to be a change of approach there.
So are we expecting the slopes to be like this, or like they are in front of Exit Realty?
It'll be more like this. That was the worst spot in the entire square. It's just topography. The interesting part about this, once you get around the corner from the corner sundry, grades flip where it goes back to the square. So the high side now is on the outside of the square, and the low side is the county side of the square. So we had to balance that. So it's not an equal thing. It does a lot of this probably through. So we try to do our best to dance the tightrope, if you will, to get those all to drain. But we've been kind of running that around. There's not a consistent flow pattern throughout the square.
What about on the side that runs like down Howard? On the Howard side of the courthouse?
The Howard side, we are lowering it a little bit, but it's not a significant issue. And the most of the, did you say on the outside of the square or the inside? Sorry.
Well, either, but
side.
I'm just trying to figure out,
Where the slope's gonna be.
yeah, where the slope's gonna fit on Howard.
Yeah, so on the inside of the square of the county, we were able to coordinate their plans and their grading. So those will be compliant at a 1.5% to the gutter with the space. So those should be relatively flat. And we were able to balance that on the east side of the street there, where that should work out. I don't have those numbers right in my mind, but when we looked at this, it was nothing. I think it was all within kind of a 2 to 4% at the most, all the way through that area. There was nothing that jumped up when we did our analysis.
We had looked at it, and I think even this portion here in this block to this picture is, I think, take away the end of Salem out there, but I think this is even the steeper slopes, they're not going to exceed what you're seeing right here. I don't believe. I think have to look at it.
And part of this was because the street came up and so did the buildings, and so there was a lot of steps again, Common Grounds has a pedestrian ramp into their building that we had to match into, so we didn't touch that. We left that where it was at, where we normally would come in and adjusted it down to even out some of the grade, but we were constrained by the buildings. So that's kind of one of the things, trying to get those into the steps and match back existing, whereas normally if we were doing more, we would have removed those things and done something else for their accessibility.
Charlie, I'm going to ask you a question here. We just approved a downtown building commission tonight. When do you think they're going to kind of start get up and running?
Yeah, I haven't even really thought of that, but ASAP.
Well, one of the things too, we're obviously going to be training with them, but the other thing is, I really would like to hear, I know we've heard from individual constituents about the slope at Exit Realty and in front of Uncommon Grounds and Fusion Fitness and places like that. But these are the folks that really are part of the downtown commission, and I know some of them sat on those original committees that were looking at that. I would really like to have maybe Chad put this presentation in front of them and talk with them about this and see where they want to go, but I don't know what the rest of the council wants to do with that.
And I would even volunteer, we could walk around the square with our plans and we could talk through with those people when they come on board. I mean, that would be very open to going through and explaining kind of what we were constrained with and what we tried to mean to make sure that there's an understanding of.
And even go back though, and if they want to make a recommendation to go back and redo some of those areas that are really tough.
Well, that's a great idea. We can do that. I think what we're getting at right now, and the reason why we wanted to get this to you ASAP is, we're not too far away from starting sidewalk construction on Salem. The second we're able to get that road in, we're going to flip the sidewalk, and then Howard's not too far along after that. So really, if there's going to be a change before we start doing other things, we really need to get there. And it's not just council decides we make a change, we let the contractor know when things get changed. I mean, there's plans that need to be changed. We need to resubmit stuff. We need to redo things. We need to resubmit plans to them. So there's a lot of steps that need to go. So really, we're kind of at a point where, these are the options we looked at. These are really the only feasible options that we see. I think from the engineer, if you would attest to this as your staff engineer, is saying these are the only feasible options. Is there something different you want to do? Because I've said all along, we chose this option because from our standpoint, as we talked about it, we looked at all the, the cost benefits and all the downside of doing any of these options. We felt this was the best option, but if there's a other direction that we need from council, then we need to go that direction.
So, go ahead.
Real quick. My understanding in talking to one of the property owners by Exit Realty is that you guys showed them that before you did it. And they said, my understanding, she told me was, we didn't think it was that big of a deal and we don't have any issue with it. Don't understand what the big hubbub is. So
I'm not 100% sure on that. I'd have to go back and look, but yeah, I'm seeing some heads nod here. So I guess we might have done that at one point. I don't remember it.
I just, like I said, I was talking to others or they were just like, I don't understand the problem. It's fine. And we'll move on. So that's, so part of me wonders, are we dealing with opinions from, and that, I'm not gonna go on what my grandma said about opinions, but.
Yeah. So let me ask you, I'm sorry, John.
No, that's right. Yeah, I was done.
Okay. So are the grades from Howard to First Street, are they similar to what the grades were between Buxton and B Street? Or are they just grades going to be pretty much what you're showing right here?
It'll be more like this block going forward. It'll be similar to this or less is where we're at. Our current design grades, I think the tallest or the steepest grade we saw out there was about 8%. We're also, again, like I said, as we're looking at the grades, if we can find a way to cheat that to get it flatter, based on kind of what the grading plan looks.
So again, no more than
what you see.
That's kind of what I thought too.
Yeah.
As we look from.
For the rest of the project, the right in front of Exit is the worst.
Right.
Everything else would be about approximately what we have.
This is further east of Uncommon Grounds. I see right there. Right. This is closer to
this is closer to the
closer to
intersection
the
of
end of the block.
Howard and
Yeah.
Salem, yeah.
And you're saying that's what it's going to kind of be.
That would be the worst
consistent.
case. We're
Consistent.
not consistently, but yeah, this is where it would be the steepest that you would see. Going
Charlie,
forward.
were you saying that you were looking for direction moving around the square?
If
If there was
there-
any
if-
further concerns?
If there is a want to
What's already
change,
done is done. but
Yeah,
The
so-
concern and the direction that's needed is what's.
council's approved a
Up
set of
next.
plans and specifications. So council's approved these plans. If there is a want to change the plans that were approved, we need that direction sooner than later.
I'm comfortable with staff and expert recommendations. I don't have any changes that I would like to see made myself.
I mean, as long as there's a guarantee that it's not gonna be like anything remotely like what's in front of the exit going the rest of the way around.
I will guarantee that with a caveat, if we find something, I think the polite word is untenable, but I'll say gnarly, that we have to deal with, and that becomes a different consideration. But going forward, our design plans, based on design elevations, everything that we see, it will not be like that, but I need a little space in there. Like, I won't give you a guarantee, but very,
Pull those sidewalk panels up
confident.
and we're finding weird things
Yeah.
every single time.
Because the biggest problem with the front exit in that area there is you just don't have the width. Right. You're not able to run it out like you
Correct.
can here where you've got,
Correct.
14 feet or whatever it is.
It was kind of the perfect storm too. I mean, we had to tie into an existing elevation into that intersection with those streets right there because we weren't going any further, any other direction to change those elevations. So it was that stormwater intakes, just where the building elevations were, where the sidewalk elevation was, all of that stuff. So, but yes, it's not, I know I've looked through that because those slopes are on the plans. That is by far the worst area. But as Chad said, could something come up where maybe we need to adjust something? Yes, but I think I can promise you from this standpoint, if there's any big change on that, we will make sure that you're aware of that through our normal communication.
I think that's the most important thing, is going forward, we have to be direction going forward. The options to go back on others, we have some time on, right? I mean, we don't have to stop construction to go back and fix those. I mean, we can fix that later if we wanted to. We can take some more time to think about that. And I would like to point out too, I have no doubt that it was compliant. I mean, professionals, we don't know. And the project overall is great. And I just can't emphasize that enough. The infrastructure, all of the work, you can't get caught up in the two mistakes, walking into the room and criticizing the two things that are wrong. So I really want to make sure that you have that message, that I'm sure you really regret the day that you took this job.
I'm saying mistakes. What are you saying?
Well, maybe not mistakes, but less pleasing portions.
Again, I'm gonna go back to that's an opinion, but.
Well, it is an opinion.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm trying to be positive here.
I know, but a mistake is a fact.
Okay, well,
But
wrong choice. of
You're
words.
saying opinion, I mean, what you're saying
Sure,
is your
wrong
opinion
choice of
is it's wrong. I think this project's gonna be great, so.
Well, wrong choice of words. I think I think 90% of it is great. I think I still have concerns, whether it's a fact or not. I still have concerns, but it's not my biggest concern. My biggest concern is going forward. Sounds like you have that. I never doubted that it was compliant. I appreciate all the time you took tonight taking us through that, but you didn't need to. I trust that you know what you're doing. It's just that, we have to deal with the fact that we don't have the wider sidewalk like we said we would, and, so.
No, and we really like the job. This is a great, working with staff has been wonderful. Contractor's been on a really good job. So we always appreciate the opportunity, and we like challenging projects. And again, I think where we come from on the design side, we try to make the best decision we can that's most cost effective for maintenance and operations. If there's something else you want, we just need to be directed in that kind of way, and we will provide you our opinion on what the best solution is. In this case, we feel like we proceeded with the best solution for the cost of the project and what we were trying to meet. But again, if there's something else we want to do, I guess we can have that conversation. We're glad to retrofit this to kind of with a better solution if that's what you like. If you tell us what that is.
So to go back to an earlier question I had, then just to make sure I'm clear on this, the Howard section from Salem to Ashland, and then the Ashland section from Howard Buxton, you said has lined up more with the county's situation on both of those, or just the Howard section? I guess
Both of them are.
Okay,
They're
so-
much flatter across.
So it's going to be a
those two.
lot flatter issue there going forward. Okay.
Absolutely.
Is it gonna have the built-in planter area?
They will. You will have these built-in planter areas and the inlay pavers as well, all the way around. So this is going to be the pattern going around the outside of the square. And this is also will be in front of the. I have to look at the exact pattern in front of the new Justice Center, but
On the Howard side on the front.
On the Howard side of it
as well too. Yep.
So that, I mean, that was part of it's part of the design process, not to go backwards too much, but that was going to be an event space and for other farmers markets and stuff. So that's why we have that only on that one side. Everything around it on the county side was more functional for their needs.
Do you have any questions about anything? You good with everything? I think I kind of heard a consensus here to just let them move forward as they're going. And is that what I'm getting consensus? Okay.
Definitely.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, folks, we are pretty much finished with the public section of the business. So we will be moving into closed session. Charlie, you wanted to move one up, is that correct?
Yeah, can we move the personnel one up
Yeah,
to the front?
yep, okay. So, notes here, so we know where we're going,
We
right?
just need the motion to go on the closed session.
Yeah, let me, okay, so, hold on a second. We're gonna enter into closed session in accordance with Iowa Code Section 21.51I to evaluate the professional competency of an individual whose appointment, hiring, performance, or discharge is being considered when necessary to prevent needless and irreparable injury to that individual's reputation, and that individual requests a closed session.
Second.
Jackie, would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Hewlin,
Aye.
Parker,
Aye.
Dalby,
Aye.
Richardson,
Aye.
Schroeder,
Aye.
Beach.
Aye.
All right. We'll take a short break here for a few minutes and then go right in.